Chapter 67. It was a guitar, and it was also a modern product. It was something from Yang Chendong's dormitory, and it appeared here together with Datsang. As mentioned before, Yang Chendong would act as anyone in order to complete various tasks. He once learned vocal music to get in touch with his target. Now was the time for him to put on a good show. With the guitar in his hand, Yang Chendong's confidence overflowed. He originally brought this thing with him to discuss things with Lady Xiang. Yang Chendong knew that for talented people, especially people like Lady Xiang, money could only be the third most important thing. Love and talent were the most important things for them. Love was something that Yang Chendong couldn't give them now. He didn't even have a wife. If he married a slut first, he didn't know how others would criticize him. At that time, it was really a matter of public criticism. Since that was the case, he could only give them talent. He believed that the beauty of music was universal. Just like the people in the future, there were people who liked Beijing opera and Kunku opera. He did not believe that the songs of the future would not work in this era. The popular and catchy feeling would be unforgettable once they came into contact with it. For example, the few military songs that he taught were already proof. Even if the military songs could be accepted by the people of the current era, he also asked Xiao Yu. She said that the military songs were really good. The beautiful melody was not something that those people of the current era could sing. It was Xiao Yu's words that gave Yang Chendong confidence. That was why he dared to stand on this stage and perform. However, even though he was confident in his heart, Yang Chendong still did not want to use something too advanced to stimulate others in the beginning. For example, if he used Jay Chou's nunchaku, the speed of the singing would probably be too fast. With a hum and ha-ha, people would be confused. If they could not hear it clearly, how could they learn it? Therefore, he had to first use something that was more popular and more accepted in this era. Although it was as distant, at least they could understand the meaning of the words. Today, not only was Yang Chendong going to sing, but he was also going to teach. The people present were his first batch of listeners and students. Now that he had decided to sing, everyone in the hall held their breaths. They wanted to see what the sixth young master, who was known as multi-talented, was going to sing. Just as everyone was building up their emotions, Yang Chendong suddenly put his guitar behind his back and said with a smile, "Since everyone is giving me face, today, this young master will follow the rules and do something exciting. How about it?" Although the question was asked, there was no reply for a long time because no one knew what he was going to do. Only Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei reacted quickly and answered loudly, "Okay." The two of them were used to the sixth young master being outstanding. In their eyes, as long as the sixth young master wanted to do something, there was nothing he could not do, and nothing he could not do well. Singing was naturally the same. For example, weren't those military songs from the sixth young master's mouth? Now that they all knew how to sing, everyone said that it was good. Haha. Seeing that there were only two people supporting him, Yang Chendong did not care. Instead, his body first relaxed, then tensed up. He immediately took out his singing skills, and then a loud and clear voice came out from his mouth. "That day, Grandpa took me to see Beijing opera. I saw a lot of big faces on the stage. Red, white, yellow, green, blue, grinning and staring. They sang and shouted at the same time. Wow, 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 it was like thunder, chattering in my ears." His opening speech had shocked everyone. That clear voice, without any hesitation, knocked on their hearts like a hammer, making them feel carefree for no reason. The blue-faced Doerdun stole the horse, the red-faced Guangong fought Changsha, the yellow-faced Dian Wei, the white-faced Cao Cao, the black-faced Zhang Fei, called Cha-Cha. Suddenly, the climax began, which was the easiest part for people to learn to sing. As soon as the lyrics came out, many people became serious and even excited. At this moment, Su Qingzong and Zhang De opened their mouths wide. Wang Si, who was looking for fault, also opened his mouth wide, showing an expression of disbelief. The whole hall was also very quiet, and only Yang Chendong's loud voice was still surging out. To be honest, the Peking opera's face is really good, but the singer is singing in a dialect. I can't understand it no matter how hard I listen to it. The third part was said casually, but it seemed to be referring to something. The rhythm of Lady Xiang's singing was too slow, and even people who heard it for the first time couldn't understand it. As soon as the words came out, it was obvious that Lady Xiang, who was standing aside and didn't know what to do, hurriedly lowered her head. It was not because she was afraid, but because she was shy. Then came the climax. The purple heavenly king holds the pagoda, the green devil fights the yiksha, the golden monkey king, the silver demon, the gray elf, ha. In order to let people in the hall understand the meaning, Yang Chendong tirelessly sang it 5 times in a row. He didn't stop until he felt that his throat was a little dry. Fortunately, on the 3rd time, at the climax, there were already people singing along. After all, as Yang Chendong said, the lyrics and melody were simple, easy to understand, and easy to sing. By the 4th time, more and more people began to sing along. By the 5th time, more than half of the people could already sing along with the song. Just when everyone was used to the melody and wanted to continue singing until the end, Yang Chendong suddenly stopped. He couldn't sing "Rap Mask" too softly. He really felt that his mouth was dry. Fortunately, there was someone who understood him. Tiger's Mane had already prepared tea and was waiting by the side. When he saw the 6th young master stop, he quickly handed him the tea. After Yang Chendong drank it up, he turned around and walked back to the stage. At this time, too many people were still immersed in "Rap Mask." It was the first time they heard such a simple and high-spirited song, and they felt that it seemed to be something prepared for their men. For something like this, what's the harm in singing it in front of others? What's the harm? Just when everyone was still immersed in this passionate "Rap Mask," a very light voice suddenly sounded. After everyone was stunned, they looked at the stage and saw Yang Chendong gently moving the guitar while speaking softly. A long time ago, there was a firearms camp. Song Lao San and his family lived next to them. They had nothing to do and even smoked big cigarettes. Big cigarettes existed in the 6 Dynasties era and were used as a tribute in the Tang Dynasty. There were already many people who smoked in the country in the late Ming Dynasty. The old couple had no children, so they gave their daughter a pet name, Delian. When Delian grew to the age of 16 or 17, she was really slim and graceful. The matchmakers kicked the door down, but Song Lao San and his wife only ate, drank, and played all day long. They didn't care about their daughter's marriage. Later, they met a young farmer, Tong Xiaolu, and the two of them fell in love secretly. Once, Tong Xiaolu came to Delian's house. The two of them were secretly having a rendezvous and were discovered by their parents. This time, they got into big trouble. It was an insult to their ancestors and a disgrace to their family. Delian's father used a leather whip to beat Delian until her skin and flesh were torn open. He gave her a kitchen knife, a rope, and a pair of scissors and told her to kill herself. In the end, Delian was forced to jump into the Qingshui River at the entrance. When Tong Xiaolu heard that Delian had jumped into the river and died, he brought the joss paper to the Qingshui River. On a windy and rainy night, he came to pay respects to his sister Delian. After paying his respects, poor Tong Xiaolu also jumped into the river. This was a tragic love story where both sides died for each other. First, he narrated the story in a narrative way. Then, the sound of the guitar accelerated, accompanied by Yang Chendong's clear voice. The tip of the peach leaf is sharp, and the willow leaves fill the sky. Dear Lord Ming, listen to me carefully. This matter happened at Shijing's Blue Indigo Factory. In the Blue Indigo Factory's firearms camp, there is a Song Lao San. Speaking of this Song Lao San, the couple smoked a lot and never had a son to give birth to a daughter, Chan Wan. Amidst the soft singing, the story was slowly spat out. The content was clear and the melody was easy to understand. It allowed people to quickly immerse themselves in it. The people in the audience who were originally agitated by the rap mask began to calm down. Then, they were brought into the story and could not extricate themselves. In particular, Miss Xiang, who was standing at the side, was already in tears. It was obvious that she had judged others by herself and thought of herself. In some ways, how could they not be the same? There were many things that were beyond their control, especially when it came to love. How could they have more choices? Yang Chendong's voice continued. He still wanted everyone to understand. After the first time, he only paused for a moment before singing the second time. Then, on the third time, Miss Xiang had already adjusted her emotions. She held the guqin and began to cooperate with Yang Chendong. It had to be said that the top courtesan was indeed the top courtesan. In terms of understanding and acceptance of music, she was indeed much faster than Yang Chendong. At least if it were him, it would be very difficult for him to completely understand the melody after listening to it twice. Miss Xiang did it. Not only that, but because the lyrics were easy to understand, she even began to sing along. At the backstage, the head courtesan, Cui Na, was quickly writing down the lyrics with a brush. She had a feeling that this song, exploring the Qingshui River, would become very popular. If the Nine Arts Workshop could be the first to sing it, it would definitely be very popular. At that time, customers would come in droves and their business would be several times better. They would even be able to get more money when they tipped people. Of course, this was based on the sixth young master's authorization. This time, he sang it 4 times. When he saw that Miss Xiang was almost done, Yang Chendong laughed and stopped playing the guqin. He stood up and looked at Wang Si, who still looked like he wanted to continue. "Young Master Wang, what do you think of my song?" Chapter 68. All right. Wang Si was a straightforward person. He stood up immediately. Not only did he say good, but he also sighed and said apologetically, "Wang Si underestimated the sixth young master previously. I sincerely apologize to you. I hope the sixth young master won't take it to heart." "Huh, what's there to take it to heart? Speaking of which, you also contributed. If you hadn't provoked me like this, I'm afraid this young master wouldn't have dared to come up on stage and embarrass myself." Yang Chendong laughed without the slightest hint of blame. Wang Si was also a clever person. He smiled and said, "Then we won't have the good fortune to enjoy such beautiful music, right?" Ha ha ha. Immediately, the two of them smiled at each other and the enmity between them disappeared. The others immediately applauded. Affected by the atmosphere, Duke Wei's son, Su Qingzong also stood up. He was obviously older than Yang Chendong, but he still cupped his fists and said, "Sixth young master, Su Qingzong rarely admires people. You are one of them. Greetings." "Greetings, eldest young master Su." Yang Chendong didn't expect Su Qingzong to stand up at this time. This was the descendant of Duke Wei and would be the next Duke Wei. He didn't dare to slight him and cupped his fists to return the greeting. On the other side, Duke King Zhangfu's second son, Zhang De, also stood up and cupped his fists. "Sixth young master, your performance and music are indeed easy to understand and catchy. Zhang De intends to make friends with you. But I wonder if there are any other songs for people to enjoy?" When Zhang De said this, everyone's eyes fell on Yang Chendong. Even Lady Xiang's face was full of anticipation. "Ha, haven't you enjoyed enough?" Yang Chendong laughed heartily. He thought that he had to strike while the iron was hot. While these people were still able to accept the new music, he should release some more. Immediately, he nodded heavily. "All right, since that's the case," second young master Zhang also said that we should make friends. "Since that's the case, I'll give everyone a song called Friends." With a smile, Yang Chendong picked up the guitar on his body and began to play it gently. "All these years, I've been alone. The wind has passed, the rain has gone, I've cried, I've made mistakes, but I still remember what I've persevered for. Only when I've truly loved someone will I understand that I'll be lonely. I'll look back, I'll have dreams, I'll have you in my heart." A seemingly peaceful piece of music poured out the bits and pieces of a person's growth process. Then, the voice suddenly rose, and the eyes looked at Zhang De, Su Qingzong, Wang Si, Yang Yang, Tiger's Mane, Beta Persei, and everyone else in the field, singing, friends walk together for life, those days will no longer exist. One sentence, a lifetime of love, a glass of wine, friends have never been lonely. Once I call you a friend, you will understand. Every time Yang Qindong's eyes landed on someone, that person could not help but straighten his body. He was excited to receive the sixth young master's gaze. This was one of the songs that made Zhou Huajin famous. Once this song was played, it was naturally unrivaled. After only 2 performances, more and more people below the stage responded. Many of them even had tears in their eyes, as if they had experienced the meaning of being friends again from this song. As soon as the 3 new songs of Rap Mask, Exploring Qingshui River, and Friend came out, everyone looked at Chu Fifan with more admiration in their eyes. No one knew who took the lead to shout, Dong Shui. East Marshal. One more song. East Marshal. East Marshal. It was as loud as thunder. The loud voice spread out from the 9 Art Square, causing the passers-by to stop and look at each other. They could not understand what was going on here today. After the shouting, Yang Qindong kept his guitar and walked down the stage with a big smile. He returned to his table. His 4th brother, Yang, who had been sitting there all this while, was already blushing. When he saw Qindong sitting down, he said, 6th brother, you're really something. Once tonight's matter is spread out, your name will be known throughout the entire capital tomorrow. Yang Qindong smiled and shook his head. This was only the beginning. He had only brought out a small portion of the things that he knew, and it had already caused a commotion in the capital. If these people were to take a look at Crimson City, wouldn't their eyeballs fall out? Yang Qindong's expression was calm, but the people in the audience seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. After listening to the 3 completely different songs, they had gradually accepted this new style of music. There were even a few people who gathered together and began to memorize the lyrics of the 3 songs. One after another, they chatted happily. Those who did such things were either people without status or people who felt that their status was not good enough. For example, the son of Duke Su Qingzong, the second son of Duke Ying, Zhang De, and the grandson of Wang Ji, the Minister of Personnel, Wang Si, did not bother to do such things. Instead, they held their wine glasses and walked over to Yang Qindong's table. Those who were able to come to the 9 Art Square and become regulars here were all people who loved music. The 3 people who were shocked by the 3 songs took the initiative to walk over to Yang Qindong's table. It was not because he was a secondary class, rank 5 official at such a young age, but because they admired his talent. The 3 songs just now allowed them to understand what it meant to be a high mountain and flowing river, and what it meant to be a heavenly sound. It could be said that the appearance of the 3 songs had completely overturned their understanding of music. At this moment, they were truly impressed by Yang Qindong's talent. Walking over to him was just an act of goodwill. Naturally, Yang Qindong, who wanted to make friends with influential officials, would not let go of such an opportunity. He immediately drank and chatted merrily with the 3 people. Including 4th brother Yang, there were 5 people in total. They chatted merrily, and laughter could be heard from time to time. Dong Shui, these 3 songs of yours are truly unforgettable. It's so refreshing. Su Qingzong, who was shaking his head, said with a flushed face. That's right. Compared to the songs I've heard in the past, it's obvious who's better. I'm afraid that I'll have to suffer in the future. Zhang De, the second son of Duke Ying, had a look of pity on his face, as if he was sad that he would not be able to hear such songs in the future. Sigh, second young master Zhang, you're right. With Dong Shui around, why would we worry about not being able to hear such beautiful songs in the future? Isn't that right? As Wang Si spoke, he winked at Yang Qindong, clearly saying that if we want to listen to songs in the future, we'll have to look for you. The 3 people here, one asking and one answering, seemed to be expressing their own opinions, but in reality, they were just testing him. Yang Qindong was well aware of this, but he didn't point it out. Instead, he went with the flow and said, in the future, if you want to listen to music, you can't look for me. No matter what, this young master is still a fifth-rank official of the imperial court. If I really do that, those imperial censors will report me to the emperor. When he mentioned the imperial censors, the three people's expressions changed. The hierarchy of the dynasty was very strict, and people were divided into 3, 6, and 9 ranks. Entertainers were of a lowly background, and were looked down upon the most. Any large family would not marry a woman of this background, even if they wanted to take a concubine, not to mention that Yang Chendong was a fifth-rank official in the imperial court. Although this official position was only a low-ranking official, and he had received it after offering the potato, it was still an official. Once there was a crown prince in the future, his power would naturally be used. If he were to sing, it would be a scandal. It would be seen as a disgrace to the imperial court. If that really happened, the spittle of the imperial censor would drown the entire imperial court. When that time came, not only Yang Chendong, but the entire Yang family would be implicated. When they thought of the consequences, Su Qingzong and the others could not help but be startled, and then they all shook their heads. Seeing that the three of them knew the serious consequences, Yang Chendong chuckled. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed that Lady Xiang was looking at him from not far away. Cui Na, who was standing beside her, had an anxious look on her face. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and he opened his crescent-shaped folding fan with a swish, gently fanning his elegant and handsome face. Come, drink wine, drink wine. There's wine today, so let's drink in the morning. While calling out to Su Qingzong and the others, Yang Chendong was waiting for the fish to take the bait. On one side of the stage, Lady Xiang clenched her fists. Because she was using too much strength, her slender fingers were starting to turn white. However, she did not care at all. Her gaze was fixed in the direction of Yang Chendong. She pursed her lips and did not speak. She was not as calm as before. Beside Lady Xiang, the middle-aged but still charming Cui Na, was chattering endlessly. Xiang, do you really plan to take the sixth young master as your master? Although his elder sister was also amazed by the 3 songs he played just now, he was still an official and a noble. We are just the lowest performers, and the difference in status is too great. Even if you are the famous Lady Xiang of the capital, if you want to take him as your master, I'm afraid he will not agree. You will only be asking for your own humiliation. Lady Xiang, who had already gathered some courage, clenched her fists even tighter, and there was a hint of struggle in her eyes. However, in the end, she still did not take the step, as if her feet were tied to a boulder. Yang Chendong, who was sitting there drinking wine and chatting with his new friends, noticed that Lady Xiang did not come over in the end. Instead, she disappeared on the side of the stage with the help of Cui Na, the procuress. He could not help but sigh in his heart. It seems that I have overestimated Lady Xiang. She is a woman after all, and her status is still inferior. She doesn't even have the courage to ask me for advice. Originally, I planned to take her as my subordinate after I appeared today, but I have to give up for the time being. Although the plan had encountered some temporary difficulties, in Yang Chendong's view, it was not a bad thing. At least tonight, he had made a name for himself with the 3 songs. Lady Xiang might have had too many concerns, but there would eventually be bold female artists. Opportunities were always for those who were prepared. After drinking 3 more cups of wine, the sound of the watchman rang out on the street outside the Jiu Arts Workshop. 1 hour. Chapter 69. There was a night ban in the Ming Dynasty. The rules were clear. Once the drum was rung at 3:00 in the morning, no one was allowed to go out. Only after the morning bell was rung at 3:00 in the morning would the ban be lifted. Those who walked on the streets during the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th night would be flogged 50 times. Those who broke the law after the 1st night ban and before the 5th night ban would be flogged 40 times. As soon as the drum was rung, the guests in the hall began to walk out. Yang Chendong lived outside the capital, so he naturally had to be 1 step ahead. Otherwise, he would not be able to make it to the southern city gate in time. Everyone, it's time. Farewell. Yang Qindong stood up and cupped his fists at Su Qingzong and the others. Take care, Dong Shuai. Su Qingzong and the others stood up with smiles on their faces. Although they had just met, they felt regretful that they had not met sooner. If there was anything Yang Qindong gained tonight other than making a name for himself, it was probably making these three friends. Of course, more importantly, the news of the three new songs spread rapidly in the capital that night. By the next day, there were already people on the streets humming the new songs that were fresh and catchy. The tip of the peach leaf is the tip of the tip, the willow leaves hold up the sky. My dear lord, listen to me carefully. In the morning, the servant girl, Little Wire, went out to buy breakfast as usual. As soon as she walked out of the courtyard, she heard two scholarly young men humming this song that she had never heard before. For a moment, Little Wire felt a refreshing feeling rush into her heart. For a moment, she stood there and listened in a daze. It was not until the two scholars were far away that she came back to her senses. Then, with a heart full of curiosity, she went to the nearest breakfast shop. When she returned to the courtyard after buying breakfast and saw the young lady getting dressed, she absent-mindedly placed the breakfast box on the round wooden table. Then, she rested her chin on her hands and carefully recalled the song she heard in her mind. Then, she hummed softly. After snorting twice, she shook her head forcefully. Her face was filled with anxiety, as if she had lost something she loved. Little Wire, what's wrong with you? After repeated this, Little Wire was still immersed in her own world. The young Miss's voice, which was as pleasant as an oriole's, entered his ears. What are you humming? It sounds really nice. Ah. Young Miss. At this time, Xiao Wei felt as if she had just woken up from a dream, but her forehead was already covered in sweat. I heard two people humming this song when I went out to buy breakfast. It gave me a refreshing feeling, so I learned a few lines. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to remember it. At this moment, Xiao Wei looked as if she hated herself to the core, as if not remembering the lyrics and melody was a huge mistake. What? The young lady's expression suddenly changed. Xiao Wei, are you saying that the song you were humming just now was a new song that people on the streets were singing? Ah. Miss, is this a new song? What kind of new song is it? Why haven't I heard it before? The young miss, whose arm was being held by the maid Xiao Wei, had not yet fully put on her clothes. Under the red dress, her slender neck was undoubtedly exposed. Her soft breasts were like white jade, half covered. Her waist was tied, and a pair of slender and well-proportioned legs were exposed. Even her beautiful lotus feet were silently enchanting, as if inviting people to look at her seductively. If there were people who frequented the red light district here, they would definitely exclaim Madame Shui and call out her identity. Madame Shui's full name was Xiao Yuxue. She was one of the famous courtesans in the red light district of the capital. Together with Madame Xiang, Dong Hanxiang, they were called half of the beauties in the city. It meant that both of them were more beautiful than half of the city. If they were combined, they would be the most beautiful woman in the city. Last night, Madame Xiang was resting in the backyard of Baihua Hall because of her female physiology. Moreover, she was young and sleepy, so she did not know what had happened in Jiu Art's workshop. Naturally, she did not know about the three new songs. When she woke up early in the morning, she heard her maid Xiao Wei humming softly. She was attracted and wanted to ask what was going on. Of course it's a new song. You know what I do. If it's an old song, it's impossible that I haven't heard of it. Her tone was very certain. Madame Shui not only had snow-white skin, but also a beautiful voice. She was also very proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. If it was an old song, she would definitely have heard of it. It's a new song. Miss, you should learn it quickly. When you sing it, more people will come to our Baihua Hall. Then, we will be able to suppress Jiu Art's workshop. Xiao Wei looked excited. Of course, whether it was because she wanted to listen to this song was unknown to outsiders. Bah! Madame Shui's red lips opened slightly. She really looked like she was exhaling. Since it's a new song, of course you haven't heard of it. If you have the time, why don't you go and find out where it came from? Oh, I'll go right away. The lively Xiao Wei agreed and rushed out of the room. When she saw Madame Shui, whose clothes were still slightly untidy, she shook her head. Xiao Wei is already 16 years old, but she still does things carelessly. I don't know who will marry her in the future. When it came to marriage, Madame Shui could not help but frown slightly. She thought of her own family background and Xiao Wei's family background. People like them did not have the right to pursue happiness. Perhaps the best ending for them was to grow old in Baihua Hall. But when she grew old, would there be a place for her here? Courtesan. It sounded like she was quite famous. But in the end, she was just eating the rice of youth. Once she grew old, her popularity would decline day by day. At that time, there would naturally be younger and more beautiful girls to replace her. After a long time, no one would remember her glory when she was young. Just like the lyrics of the later generations said, one wrong step, and you'll regret it forever. Dancers were also human. Who could she tell the pain in her heart? For the oppression of life, she swallowed her tears. Is this fate? Destined to live the rest of my life? It was because of the experience of countless predecessors that people like Madame Shui had long been prepared for it. She just wanted to earn more money while she was young. In this way, she would be able to feed herself when she grew old. The appearance of a new song was often the best opportunity. It could turn a person from a nobody to a world-famous person. At that time, there would naturally be some rich benefactors. With many followers, it would be the most glorious time of their lives. Madame Shui had a feeling that this song was so fresh and different from what she had learned before. Once she learned it, she would definitely become popular. She must learn this song. In the Hu mansion. Hu Yan got up, ate, and read as usual. Of course, the so-called reading was not the wonderful stories in Yang's newspaper, but the books on women's discipline and women's ethics that modern women must learn. As a woman, she had to marry and spend most of her life in her husband's family. How to be a good wife and take care of the family affairs for her husband was something that most women dealt with in their lives. If one wanted to do something, he naturally had to do it with his behavior. This required a woman to be educated and reasonable, and to learn the 3 obedience and 4 virtues. The so-called 3 obedience and 4 virtues were the foundation of a woman's life. The 3 obedience referred to obey the father before marriage, to obey the husband after marriage, and to obey the son after the husband's death. The 4 virtues referred to virtue, appearance, speech, and work. That is to say, as a woman, the most important thing was moral character, to be able to stand upright. Then it was appearance, meaning that one should be dignified, steady, and courteous, not frivolous and casual. Speech, meaning that when conversing with others, one should be able to casually add meaning, be able to understand what others are saying, and know what one should and shouldn't say. And the way of managing a family. The way of managing a family includes supporting one's husband and teaching one's children, respecting the old and loving the young, being diligent and thrifty, and other details of life. Not only that, there were also things like the 3 principles and 5 elements, etc. It was because of the etiquette and teachings in these so-called books that women's social status was not very high. If she married a man who liked her and was willing to share everything with her, it would be better. At least she still had the final say in the family. But if she met a man who did not know how to care for her, she would be like Yang Qi and Sister Yang, gradually becoming a servant. Hu Yan's grandfather, Hu Ming, was still alive. Although he was not young anymore, he was still healthy and was an important official in the imperial court. He was one of the 5 ministers entrusted to Xuanzong, and also held the position of Minister of Rights. Her father, Wu Changning, was the governor of the Brocade Guards and held great power. He was in his 40s and was full of vigor. With such a grandfather and father, Hu Yan did not have to worry for the time being. Even if she married into her husband's family, with such a family, she would not suffer any losses. But in the end, she still had to rely on herself. Relying on her mother's family was not a long-term solution. This required Hu Yan to be strong enough in order to live a life without worry. Naturally, things like female morality and female discipline were compulsory homework every day. Perhaps she was spoiled by her grandfather and father, but when Hu Yan read these books, she would feel sleepy. Although she had just woken up not long ago, her eyes were still listless. Her head also seemed to lack some support. From time to time, her head would fall down, but she still managed to hold on, making her look extremely adorable. Young Mississippi, Hu Yan, who was hesitating whether or not to fight 300 rounds with the Duke of Zhou, was instantly awakened by a series of screams. At that moment, the Duke of Zhou was so frightened that he ran off to who knows where. After the screams, the servant girl Xiao Qing rushed into the study, bringing with her a whirlwind. If she ran 100 meters at this speed, she should be able to barely pass. Chapter 70. Little Qing. Looking at the maidservant who was sweating profusely and was not reserved at all, Hu Yan pretended to be angry and scolded angrily with her small mouth. Don't you know what it means to be prudent and reserved? Look at you now, you don't look like a maidservant of the Hu family. You have been with me for so long, why can't you learn? Hu Yan still looked like she wanted to seize the opportunity to teach little Qing a lesson. Unexpectedly, little Qing did not listen to this at all. Instead, she looked at Hu Yan with a pair of bright black eyes and said, Miss, Dong Shuai went to the red light district last night. What? A simple sentence was enough to make Hu Yan, who wanted to pretend to be a miss, suddenly change her attitude. Her originally pouting mouth was already wide open, but then she suddenly closed it tightly and said with a voice that was close to gnashing her teeth, I didn't expect that he is also such a shameless man. Originally, she wanted to come here to take credit and also to prove that her identity as a spy lived up to her name. She did not expect that one sentence would cause the miss to misunderstand her meaning. Little Qing quickly corrected herself and said, wrong. Dong Shuai did go to the red light district, but it was not an ordinary place of prostitution. He went to Jiu Art's workshop. Not only that, he also sang 3 songs there. I heard that each song made people feel refreshed and shocked. This time, little Qing did not dare to hold back in the slightest and said everything that she had heard in one breath. What? He knows how to sing. He knows music. At this moment, Hu Yan realized that she had misunderstood Yang Chendong. However, at this moment, she would not admit that she was wrong, because her body and mind had been attracted by a better topic. Not only does he know, I heard that one of the songs was about a tragic love story. It was about a long time ago, there was a firearms camp. Song Laoson's family lived next to them. They had nothing to do, and then there was a man called Little Six and a girl called Big Lotus. Little Qing also knew half of it and did not completely understand. She only heard it repeated by others. Things that passed through other people's ears were not very clear. Hu Yan was a very smart girl. She was able to make out the gist of it. He's the 6th young master. Could this little 6th be referring to him? Could that Dalian be a girl he knows in Jianghu? Does he really know how to act out a story for fun? I heard that Dong Shuai not only knows it, but he is also very good at it. After one song, even Lady Xiang, who is famous for her beauty, was ashamed. She took the initiative to give up the stage and retreated. She did not have the face to come out again. Xiao Qing thought about how she had spent some money and heard the story of the scholar who happened to be at Jiu's shop last night. She couldn't help but feel excited. Was there anything this Dong Shuai wouldn't do? Is there such a thing? Hu Yan's eyes were naturally wide open, and her face was full of joy. She felt as if she had done something great. Of course. I also heard that the top courtesan of 100 Flowers Hall, Lady Shui, who is also famous for her beauty, has rushed to Yang village in the south of the city in a sedan chair. She said that she wants to be apprenticed to a master. The more little Qing spoke, the bigger her eyes became. That was an expression of being honored, as if she was the one who had been acknowledged as a master. Hu Yan, who was listening in riddles, immediately blushed when she heard that Lady Shui was going to Yang village to be apprenticed to a master. Shameless. How can Dong Shui accept someone like her as his disciple? If she can't go, she will just be asking for trouble. As if she had made an assertion, Hu Yan said, Dong Shui can sing at home if he knows how to sing. Why does he have to go to Jiu Art's workshop? Isn't he afraid that the imperial censors will impeach him? As she spoke, she put her fist to her lips as if she was anxious about something. When little Qing saw this scene, she immediately laughed out loud. Miss, who are you to Dong Shui? Why are you so anxious for him? I am him. When Hu Yan said this, she suddenly realized that she had been tricked by little Qing. Her face immediately turned red. She clenched her fist and, fiercely, chased after little Qing. For a moment, the two young women started a marathon competition in the study. In the imperial court, the officials were in a good mood today. It was probably because they saw the high-yield grain that could produce more than 20 dan of grain yesterday, which solved a big problem for the development of the Great Ming Dynasty. Now, everyone was smiling. Even colleagues who were not close to each other nodded to each other when they saw each other, which was rare for them to be magnanimous. Zhu Qizhen was also in a good mood. Last night, in Empress Qian's bedroom, he was really praised. Speaking of Empress Qian, she was really well-behaved, virtuous, and gentle. She was born in Haizhou. Her father, Qian Gui, was a military commander. She was made empress in 1442. From then on, she only had one person in her eyes, Zhu Qizhen. In other people's eyes, Zhu Qizhen was Emperor Yingzong. But in Empress Qian's eyes, he was her husband, her sky. She dedicated all her love to this person. In the history of the Great Ming Dynasty, Emperor Yingzong was captured by Yes Hen during the Tumma Rebellion. In order to welcome Yingzong back to the court, she sent out all the assets in her palace. Every day, she mourned and prayed for the gods to bless Yingzong. When she was tired, she would lie down on the ground, which caused one of her legs to be disabled. She cried all day and cried until one of her eyes was blind. Later, Emperor Yingzong returned to the capital and was imprisoned in the Nangong Palace. During this period, life was difficult. Empress Qian used hand knitting to support the two of them. This lasted for 7 years. After Zhu Qizhen died, he was afraid that Empress Qian would be bullied by imperial concubine Zhou. He specially ordered Empress Qian to have the honor of being buried with me after she passed away. It could be said that Empress Qian was a model of virtue. Normally, it was very difficult to get such a person to flatter him and say a few words of praise. However, after seeing the potatoes at Yangjia village, Empress Qian acted out of character. She praised Yingzong endlessly, saying that it was because the emperor was virtuous that he was bestowed with such a high-yielding and auspicious item. She said that Yingzong should devote himself to state affairs and work hard for the prosperity of the Great Ming Dynasty. After receiving Empress Qian's praise, he was much more enthusiastic and proactive when serving the emperor in bed. This caused Zhu Qizhen to wake up in the morning with a face full of radiance. He was unable to contain his joy and was in a good mood. When the emperor's mood was good, the officials were naturally happy as well. During the morning court, the officials became much more amiable. Some of the matters that were reported seemed to have been resolved satisfactorily. Nearly 2 hours passed. Yingzong was several times more efficient than usual and dealt with several major matters in succession. When he saw that the officials were satisfied, Yingzong was also happy. Zhu Qizhen himself liked this kind of scene where everyone was happy. Wouldn't it be best for everyone to be happy? Good. The atmosphere in the court today is very good. The emperor and his officials are of one mind. Zhen is very happy. Zhu Qizhen said with a happy and satisfied expression. After saying this, he raised his right hand. This was his usual action. He was preparing to end court. Just as Wang Zhen, the head of the ceremony directorate, was about to shout, "End court," a person suddenly walked out of the room. This person had a short stature, and as soon as he left the room, he fell to his knees and said, "Your Majesty, this subject, Su Yozhen, has a memorial." This official heard that in the red light district last night, the newly appointed Crown Prince Yang Chendong sang loudly in the Nine Arts workshop. He actually dared to share the stage with an actress. This is truly a disgrace to an official. This official asks the emperor to punish him. With such a good situation, Ingzong was in a happy mood. Suddenly, a person like this appeared. Not only did he kneel down and shout, he actually criticized the crown prince who had made a great contribution yesterday, Yang Chendong. This shout caused the originally harmonious scene between the emperor and his officials to change. When all the officials looked at Su Yozhen, their faces were filled with anger. As an official of the court, going to the red light district was a disgrace. Especially when he dared to share the stage with an actress, it was a disgrace to an official. Su Yozhen was an imperial censor in the imperial censorate and was even a 7th-rank official. It wasn't wrong for him to spread rumors. However, he also needed to look at the time and situation, right? Just yesterday, the emperor had just appointed Yang Chendong as the crown prince's horse Washington. Today, he went to impeach him. What did this mean? Was he trying to say that the emperor was capricious? At this moment, not only were the officials angry, even Ingzong's face was filled with displeasure. Wang Zhen, who was standing beside him, glared fiercely at Right Capital Imperial Censor Chen Yi. His meaning was that this was his subordinate. How could he not know when to advance or retreat and be so tactless? Regarding this, Right Capital Imperial Censor Chen Yi also had an expression of being wronged. Although he was the head of the Imperial Censor, not all Imperial Censors needed his approval before they could submit a memorial. However, everyone who was on duty had this authority. They would give you face and greet you. However, there were countless cases where they didn't give you face and suddenly attacked you. It was clear that this time, Su Yozhen didn't communicate with him. Instead, she chose to reprimand him in front of the court. Most of the time, people who reprimand him would offend people. Usually, this kind of person wouldn't have a good ending in the future. After all, in the officialdom, if you respect me, I'll return you 10 feet. If you're good, I'm good, everyone will be good. However, if there were people who didn't want to be united and wanted to cause trouble, they would naturally not be tolerated by everyone. However, the imperial censors didn't belong to this category. Their original duty was to reprimand and complain about injustice. They would spread the news to the imperial court and deliver it to the emperor's ears. Therefore, in terms of duty, Su Yozhen's actions weren't wrong. Not only that, the emperor couldn't kill him. Not killing the imperial censors was originally set by Ming Dynasty's first ancestor, Zhu Yuanzhang. Although Ingzong wasn't happy with Su Yozhen's actions, he couldn't do anything. He could only retract his right hand that he was about to raise. He then looked at the officials and asked, "Let's discuss this. How should we handle this matter?" Chapter 71. He said, handle, not deal. This in itself was a clear indication of Ingzong's attitude. He'd only been promoted yesterday because he'd offered up a potato. If Yang Chendong hadn't been so young, a minor 5th-rank position would have been a bit too light. Zhu Qizhen had just said that when the immortal abode opened for business, he would attend if he had the time. This was a disguised form of compensation. All of the officials were well aware of this, but none of them objected. After all, this was what Yang Chendong deserved. But it had only been a day. No. It hadn't even been 24 hours yet. Yet someone was already impeaching Yang Chendong. How was this a memorial? This was clearly a slap to the emperor's face. As the saying went, if the lord was humiliated, the subject would die. All of the officials knew that they had an obligation and a responsibility to absolve Yang Chendong today. Otherwise, if they judged others by their own standards, wouldn't it be possible for them to be rewarded one day and taken back the next? Regardless of whether the lips were gone, the teeth would feel cold, or whether officials would protect each other, the officials had no choice but to stand in Yang Chendong's shoes. However, before the officials could think of a way to express their stance, another person stepped forward. When he stepped forward with his ceremonial tablet in hand, the officials knew something was wrong. Some of them even revealed anxious expressions. Reporting to Your Majesty, this subject Yu Qian agrees with Governor Su's request. As an official of the court, he should strictly abide by the law. However, not only did he wander around the brothels, he even dared to sing on the same stage as an entertainer. This is truly a loss of face for us court officials. Your Majesty, please issue an edict to punish him. As he spoke, the proud left assistant minister of the Ministry of War, Yu Qian, knelt on the ground and bowed. Yu Qian, courtesy name Tingyi, was from Qiantang. He had studied diligently since his youth and had lofty ambitions. He admired Wen Tianxiang's integrity and had kept Wen Tianxiang's image at his side for decades. This Yu Qian was not the great master who smoked, permed his hair and drank wine, but he was actually one of the loyal and famous ministers of the Ming dynasty. He attached importance to reputation and integrity, to fame and fortune. When he died, his family did not have any wealth left. He attached importance to dying for a benevolent cause, to death. After the Tumu Fort rebellion, he fought to the death in Walla without retreating. He attached importance to the country, to the emperor. After the Tumu Fort rebellion, when we elected Zhu Qiyu as the emperor, we claimed that we were doing it for the sake of the country, not for our own personal interests. Yu Qian was so strong that even Wang Jin couldn't do anything to him. He was one of the few officials who made Steward Wang feel helpless. At this moment, he stood out and supported Su Yozhen, making the situation even more complicated and serious. This subject has a different opinion. The Minister of Revenue, Wang Zhua, stepped forward, as if he was afraid that there would be other officials who would agree with him. Zhu Qizhen, who was frowning, suddenly heard an official say that he had a different opinion. He was startled and said, "Speak." Your Majesty, although the Nine Arts Workshop is in the red light district, it is not a place where one can seek pleasure. It can be considered a pure land. Yang Shima going there isn't a violation of the rules. Wang Zhua spoke first, separating the Nine Arts Workshop from the red light district. This was his excuse. Secondly, of the 6 arts of a gentleman, there is the word music. Yang Shima created Yang Bao and his many talents have long been known to the world. It is nothing much for him to sing a few songs. On the contrary, this subject feels that this is because he understands the affairs of the people and can show the style of a minister. A minister is omnipotent and knows everything. Thirdly, Yang Shima is still young and has just entered the capital. It is inevitable that he would be attracted by the prosperity here and do some inappropriate things. This is completely understandable. With these 3 points, this subject pleads for Your Majesty to be merciful and not punish Yang Shima to show Your Majesty's magnanimity. After speaking, Wang Zhua kowtowed to the ground and shouted, "Long live the Emperor," before kowtowing again. The moment Wang Zhua stepped forward, the Minister of Personnel, Wang Ji, stepped forward as well. This morning, his grandson, Wang Si, came forward to pay his respects. Kneeling on the ground, he recounted the events that happened at the Nine Arts Workshop in detail. Using his own words, if not for his provocation, Yang Chendong wouldn't have gone on stage to sing, and there wouldn't have been any trouble. If the censors were to impeach him, he hoped that his grandfather would speak up for him. Otherwise, if Yang Chendong were to be punished, as an accomplice, he wouldn't be in a good position either. After hearing the story, Wang Ji was infuriated. This grandson of his was good at everything. He was hard-working in his studies and diligent in his work. However, he loved to be in the limelight too much, and he loved to wander around those red-light districts. He had already brought up this matter more than once. Yet, not only was his grandson unrepentant, he even caused a huge commotion. As the royal court was about to start, Wang Ji didn't have the time to reprimand his grandson. He only wanted to talk about it after he returned from the royal court. However, he didn't expect that someone would still use this as an excuse. Seeing that the emperor and the officials had the same attitude, Wang Ji hesitated for a moment before stepping forward to speak up for Yang Chendong. Your Majesty, this subject believes that Lord Wang's words are appropriate. Who hasn't been young and frivolous? Furthermore, Yang Shima's song has nothing to do with the political situation. Please give him a chance on account of his contributions. After Wang Ji finished speaking, he picked up his ceremonial tablet and knelt on the ground with a plop. Even though Yang Shima's actions sound ridiculous, it is just a joke among the young. This subject believes that there is no need to discuss it in the royal court. This old subject hopes that your majesty won't pay too much attention to it. The Minister of Rights, Hu Kuang, also slowly knelt on the ground. As the Minister of Rights, even he believed that Yang Qindong's actions didn't violate the rules of etiquette. Naturally, others couldn't say anything. Including Hu Kuang, there were 3 important officials speaking up for Yang Qindong. With these 3 officials at the front, the other officials all knelt on the ground and voiced their agreement. Even Wang Zhen, who was standing next to the emperor, took this opportunity to whisper to Zhu Qizhen, "Your Majesty, Yang Shima's actions aren't harmful at all, so there is no need to pursue this matter. Your Majesty can have him open a restaurant and do business, so what's the big deal about singing a few songs? Your Majesty is completely free to make your own decisions." In addition, the imperial censor's words should also be rewarded, and this matter can be settled. The immortal abode was about to open, and Wang Zhen had a 10% stake in it. Who knew how much more income they would get in that month? If something were to happen now, the immortal abode would definitely be implicated. This was tantamount to harming their own interests, so they naturally had to speak up. With the officials pleading for leniency and Wang Zhen's words, Yingzong understood what was going on. After lightly rubbing his forehead, he spoke in a clear voice. This subject's words are reasonable. Yang Shima is merely young and restless, and he has just arrived in the capital. Everything is new to him, so it is reasonable for him to do something that is slightly out of line. There is no need to pursue this matter any further. As for Supervisor Su, he is diligent and responsible in his work. He will be rewarded and promoted to the position of Supervisor of the Imperial Censorate's Bureau of Experience. The Imperial Censorate's Bureau of Experience was a 6th-rank official. Compared to his previous 7th-rank official position, it was a 2-rank promotion. This could be considered an explanation for this person's actions. The officials were immediately overjoyed, all of them cheering for the emperor's wisdom. Just when everyone thought that the matter had been resolved and all the officials were about to stand up, who would have thought that the newly promoted imperial censor Su Yozhen would continue to kowtow to the ground and ask, "Your Majesty, if Yang Shima continues to sing songs in the future, can you make an exception and not pursue this matter? His Majesty has already promoted you, but you still want to bite on this matter and not let it go. This means that you don't know how to do things, you don't know how to conduct yourself." For a moment, some of the officials looked at him with stern eyes. The feeling that Su Yozhen gave them before was not like this. This person was smooth and slick and very good at dealing with people. Transferring him to the Imperial Censorate was just a way to gain experience and accumulate experience. But why was this person so stubborn today? Did he want to provoke the Emperor's displeasure? At this moment, Yingzong was indeed a little angry. Seeing that Su Yozhen still wanted to hold on to this matter and not let it go, he loudly reprimanded. Zhen said, "Yang Shima is young and restless, and he is multi-talented. Yang Shima's story was his doing. Since writing a story can be accepted by everyone, so what if he sings a song? In the future, there is no need to report such matters. If you have the time, why don't you observe the suffering of the common people and see if the officials are doing their best?" It was clear that Yingzong had a problem with the Imperial Censorate. Right Imperial Censorate Chen Yi lowered his head and did not dare to say anything. Feeling that Yingzong's anger was not good, the other officials naturally did not dare to say anything. Only Su Yozhen, who did not know where he got the courage, actually knelt on the ground and shouted, "This official knows. In the future, if there is anything related to Yang Shima, it will not be reported." Humph. Yingzong also angrily glared at Su Yozhen. Then, without waiting for Wang Zhen to call for the court to end, he got up and left the dragon throne. The officials also left with the emperor. Even Right Imperial Censorate Chen Yi did not pay attention to Su Yozhen, who was still kneeling on the ground, and left with the other officials. Soon, there were only 2 people left in the entire court. One was the kneeling Su Yozhen, and the other was the left Assistant Minister of the Ministry of War, Yu Qian. Official Su, quickly get up. The emperor and the officials have all left. Reaching out his hand to help Su Yozhen up, Yu Qian's face was filled with admiration. Yu Qian was upright and plain-spoken. Even with Wang Zhen's power, he did not lower his head, and the other party could not do anything to him. It was very difficult to make such a person admire others. But now, Su Yozhen did it. Being helped up by Yu Qian, Su Yozhen was flattered. Official Yu, many thanks, many thanks. Official Su, there is no need to be like this. I should be the one thanking you. Imperial censors should be like Official Su, not fearing power, and report to the emperor. Even if the person you are referring to has made a great contribution, it is still the same. When he said these words, Yu Qian's words were righteous, and his face was solemn. Not only did he say this, in fact, he had always done things this way. However, he did not notice that at this moment, Su Yozhen's face was filled with shame. Only he himself knew why he would do such a thing today. His heart was far from being as pure and holy as Yu Qian seemed. On the contrary, it was extremely dirty. It was just that it was not enough for people to understand. Official Yu is too modest, too modest. Drenched in cold sweat, Su Yozhen was afraid that he would unknowingly give himself away if he stayed, so he cupped his fists and bid farewell. Yu Qian was left standing alone in the court, his gaze seemingly piercing through the imperial city, piercing through the capital, and reaching the Yang clan manor in the southern part of the city. Yang Chendong, Yang Chendong, first you made a report to control the direction of public opinion, and then you made such a ruckus the moment you arrived in the capital. Just what are you thinking? Are you an official or a merchant? Are you loyal or treacherous? Chapter 72. Yesterday could be said to be a busy day. In the morning, Yang Chendong first beat 7th brother-in-law Wang Go, then beat the drum of the imperial court, went to the imperial court, saw the emperor, and presented him with the auspicious and high-yielding potato. In the afternoon, he saw his eldest brother, second brother, and the others, whom he had not seen for a long time. In the evening, he went to the red light district, 9 arts workshop, and made 3 astonishing songs. After returning to the Yang family manor, Yang Chendong fell asleep immediately. It was not until the sun was high in the sky that he got out of bed with the help of his maid Xiao Yin. It wasn't that Yang Chendong insisted on using Xiao Yin's help. For this matter, he had refused many times. Until one day, Xiao Yin cried in front of him and asked if the young master didn't want her anymore. This caused Yang Chendong to have no choice but to give in. It had to be said that the men of this era were very fortunate. After tidying up properly, the kitchen maid Yi Qiu had already prepared breakfast on the round table. As he ate in big bites, he listened to Tiger's Mane, who was standing beside him, report the matters of today's imperial court. Young master, after Su Yozhen received our money, she indeed went to court today to impeach you. After that, the officials pleaded for leniency. The emperor also said that in the future, there is no need to report anything related to you. Tiger's Mane widened his eyes and looked at Yang Chendong with a gaze full of admiration. His reverence was like a torrential river that flowed endlessly. Just last night, when he left the 9 arts workshop, Yang Chendong handed the task to Tiger's Mane. He had someone bring enough money to find an imperial censor called Su Yozhen. Then, he did the same thing. When he first received the task, Tiger's Mane was naturally very puzzled. He couldn't understand what the young master was trying to do. Spending money to hire someone to impeach him? Was he crazy? However, after a long period of training, his nature of obedience had been cultivated. In the end, he still did as he was told. Sure enough, after finding Su Yozhen's house, he snuck into the courtyard and took out 2,000 taels of silver. That person's eyes lit up, and he only hesitated for a moment before agreeing. This led to today's morning court session. All of this seemed to be because someone was jealous of Yang Chendong's rise in power. Everyone followed this train of thought. Who would have thought that this was just a self-written and self-directed play by the 6th young master? Taking advantage of the fact that he had just offered up an auspicious item, there would certainly be no result if someone tried to impeach him. The ministers were thinking about dying if the lips were cold and the teeth were cold. The emperor was thinking about his own face. All of this was calculated by Yang Qindong, so he took this risk. The benefits of taking the risk were obvious. In the future, no one in the imperial court would bring up this matter again. In this way, he could openly be a rich man, a true official businessman, a person who was recognized by everyone as rich. Everyone knew that he had money, so when he did things, it would naturally be much smoother, and he would have fewer worries. As for why he used Su Yozhen and not someone else, this was the advantage of Yang Qindong's prophetic ability. Su Yozhen had a short stature and an ordinary appearance, but he was very intelligent. He liked fame and was good at reading people's expressions. In history, when Mingyingzong was restored, he had made a great contribution. Later on, he became an important minister with great power. During this time, he had also engaged in open and secret struggles with Shihang and Chao Jixiang within the ruling class. This kind of person clearly had some ability, and he valued benefits. He also had the identity of an imperial censor. If he didn't use him, wouldn't it be a waste? The ancients had long said that it was better to offend a gentleman than a villain. Based on this principle, Yang Qindong interacted with a gentleman based on the principle of respect. Towards villains, he used benefits to pull them together. In this way, he could take care of all aspects and eliminate many dangers invisibly. Naturally, people like Su Yozhen should be used well. If he really had talent, he would be given the opportunity to show it. But when it came to sincere friendship, it was far from enough. Not bad. After listening to Tiger's Mane's report of the situation, Yang Qindong smiled with satisfaction. Your people in the security bureau have worked hard. Reward the relevant personnel with 100 taels of silver. As the bureau chief, you can deal with it as you see fit. Rewards should be given for meritorious service. This was a principle that Yang Qindong deeply remembered. Only then would more people be willing to work for you and do things with peace of mind. Thank you, young master. Tiger's Mane said with slight excitement. 100 taels of silver was naturally nothing to the security bureau, which spent money like water. What was important was Yang Qindong's satisfaction with their work. This was what they pursued. By the way, young master, a sedan chair has arrived outside the Yang family manor. One of the ladies even handed over a name card. Where's the name card? Yang Qindong asked as he put the last bite of breakfast into his mouth and clapped his hands. That is with Xiao Yin. Tiger's Mane lowered his head, not daring to look at Yang Qindong. Hee hee. Yang Qindong smiled, then got up and went to the study next door. Sure enough, there was a name card neatly placed on the wooden table with beautiful words written on it. Xiao Yin was very sensible. She wouldn't make things difficult for Yang Qindong on important matters. She just wanted to throw a tantrum and let people know that she knew some things, and even some things that she didn't like. Yang Qindong also saw this as another kind of beauty for girls, the beauty of jealousy. He knew that this was Xiao Yin's way of reminding him not to get too close to the lady who came to see him. He smiled and took the name card. The name of the name card was, for the 6th young master Yang Qindong. When he opened it, a fragrant smell immediately assailed his nostrils. There was also a line of beautiful words written on it. Your servant, Xiao Yushua, greets the 6th young master Yang Qindong. Please don't refuse. Jun Yushua. Yang Qindong took the name card and walked out of the study to Tiger's Mane, who had a respectful expression on his face. Knowing that this was a question for him, Tiger's Mane thought for a moment before the identity of this person popped up in his mind. Young master, Xiao Yushua is Lady Shue's name. Oh, so it's Lady Shue. Hee hee, she's smart. By the way, is Lady Xiang here yet? Yang Qindong recalled Dong Hanxiang's struggling expression last night. No. Tiger's Mane shook his head and scolded Lady Xiang in his heart for not being sensible enough. The young master Yang Qindong personally went to your 9 arts workshop and sang 3 songs. You don't know how to take advantage of such an opportunity? It really makes one speechless. Yang Chendong's face clearly flashed with a hint of loneliness. It was unknown whether he was feeling pity for Lady Xiang or lamenting the outdated views of people nowadays. Forget it. Since Lady Shui came in person, I'll just meet her. If she's a talent, I'm willing to teach the young master Yang Chendong a few things. This is Lady Xiang's fortune, Tiger's Mane said enviously when he heard that this lady could be taught by the young master Yang Chendong in person. As the Yang family system expanded, the chances of being taught by the sixth young master Yang Chendong in person became fewer and fewer. Whenever there was an opportunity, everyone would try their best to seize it. How about this? Inform the people to enter the manor. Also, find Xiaoyin and arrange for someone to send out the things I prepared when I returned last night. Remember, don't miss out on a single family. Send out all the gifts to the manors of the 5th rank officials in the capital. Also, don't miss out on the families of my brothers and sisters. Yang Chendong didn't want to offend people by sending out gifts. That wouldn't be worth it. Yes. Tiger's Mane naturally knew about this and immediately agreed. However, he didn't leave immediately. Instead, he looked hesitant. What's wrong? Is there something else? Yang Chendong knew that Tiger's Mane had something to ask, so he looked at him curiously. That. Our people from the Bureau of Security have found out that someone is asking around about the young master's past. Tiger's Mane had just said this when he felt the atmosphere in the room become oppressive. He saw Yang Chendong's expression become extremely solemn, even a little cold. Who is it? The young master. It's not just anyone. It's Hu Yan, the granddaughter of the Minister of Rights, Hu Yan, the daughter of the Imperial Guard's town supervisor, Hu Changming. This is some information on her. Tiger's Mane took out a small book from his bosom and turned to leave. This matter wasn't about someone worrying about the 6th young master's safety. It was highly likely that it was about the love between a man and a woman. Even though he was the young master's subordinate, he couldn't interfere in this matter. It's actually a woman? Yang Chendong was also a little dizzy from this sudden turn of events. When he looked at the small book, it recorded in detail about Hu Yan. It also emphasized that this woman was already 16 years old. However, until now, no one had discovered that someone had gone to bring her forward. After an investigation by the Bureau of Security, they found out that it was Hu Changming's idea. The small book also recorded that Hu Yan was educated and well-mannered. Moreover, she was as beautiful as a fairy. She was also clever and cute. Looking at this, how could Yang Chendong not know what this meant? At this moment, the matter of Hu Zhangming breaking into the Yang family's old house in Fang Jianing Mansion was naturally figured out in an instant. At this moment, Yang Chendong understood that Hu Zhangming's worship of his parents at that time was fake, and his observation of himself was real. The daughter of the Hu family seems to come from a good background. Yang Chendong thought and smiled. No wonder Tiger's man reported the situation to him after being pestered like this. He must have known the importance of this matter. To be honest, if the Bureau of Security hadn't found out that someone was investigating the 6th young master this time, they naturally wouldn't have noticed Hu Yan, and the following things wouldn't have happened. Well, it's better to let nature take its course when it comes to love. After reading the small book, Yang Chendong put it in a small cabinet in the study. For him, it was still too early to talk about love. How to successfully lay a good foundation was the most important thing. In the side hall of the Yang family's manor, Madame Shui was sitting with the servant girl Xiao Wei. Even though he was seated, he still had a nervous expression on his face. His face was flushed red, making him look even more enchanting. Chapter 73. Seeing Xiao Yushua's nervousness, Xiao Wei tried to cheer her up. Miss, you don't have to be so nervous. You can relax. Many childs and young master from noble families have spent money to go to Baihua Hall just to see you. The 6th young master is also a man. He must be the same as them. No. It's not the same. Madame Shui retorted. You've read the wonderful stories in Yang's Daily. And the song you hummed today, the touching love story. How can the person who wrote these things be the same as the other young master? It's not the same. Before they met, Yang Chendong had become a great figure in Madame Shui's heart. It was no wonder that she could not keep calm and was so nervous. Xiao Wei saw that Xiao Yushua seemed to be possessed, so she wanted to comfort her. But at this moment, footsteps came from outside the room. Then Yang Chendong, dressed in cyan, walked into the side hall accompanied by the maid Xiao Yin. He looked indifferent, and his chin was slightly raised at a 45-degree angle. His chiseled face, especially the confident smile on his face, seemed to have a magic power that deeply attracted Madame Shui and Xiao Wei's eyes. Xiao Yin also noticed the two women's behavior and immediately raised her head proudly. In her eyes, the sixth young master was undoubtedly the most perfect man. It was reasonable for other women to look at her young master in this way. While they were looking at Yang Chendong, he was also looking at the two women. In particular, Madame Shui gave him a feeling of déjà vu. Upon closer inspection, he realized that this woman actually had the shadow of Su Qing, an actress from the future. Especially the two shallow dimples on her face, which made her look even more similar. She had a face similar to Su Qing's. Her skin was as white as snow, but she was younger in age. She also had an enchanting temperament. Men who saw her would not only be aroused, but would also have a very primitive behavior. Fortunately, Yang Chendong's self-control was strong enough to suppress the moment his body reacted. Then, he revealed an extremely charming male smile and sat down at the head of the table. He opened the crescent-shaped folding fan in his hand and gently fanned it, looking like an elegant and handsome young master. It was not until Yang Chendong found a chair and sat down that Madame Shui woke up. Thinking of her performance just now, she couldn't help but blush. Then she bent down and said, "Dong Hanshua greets Dong Shui. Please get up." Yang Chendong smiled and stretched out his hand to support Madame Snow. Madame Snow took the opportunity to stand up. Then the sixth young master said with a smile, "I've long heard that Madame Shui is known as half the beauty of the city and is proficient in the beauty of melody. I wonder if I have the honor of listening to the sound from outer space?" Yang Chendong's words made Madame Snow feel relieved. She was most afraid that he would say something about his identity. If so, she, who was originally a lowly person, didn't know how to know. Now that he took the initiative to talk about music, she was very happy. In that case, I'll make a fool of myself. Madame Snow didn't dare to refuse Yang Chendong's request, not to mention that she had taken the initiative to ask for his help today. She had to be more humble. Madame Snow agreed softly. Then she bowed and said to her maid Xiao Wei, "Prepare the guzheng." Xiao Wei was capable and agile. She quickly placed the guzheng she brought with her in the side hall. Madame Snow walked slowly to the guzheng and sat down. She looked up at Yang Chendong and smiled charmingly. Then her slender fingers fell on the guzheng and gently plucked the strings. "You love me, I love you, 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 I love you." The poem, Locking the South Branch and Molding Clay Figurines, was written by Zhao Mengfu's wife, Guan Sheng, a master of calligraphy and painting in the early Yuan dynasty. The background story was that when Zhao Mengfu was 50 years old, he wanted to imitate the famous scholars at that time to take a concubine, but he was too embarrassed to tell his wife. His wife knew and wrote this poem. After reading My Love poem, Zhao Mengfu was deeply moved and never mentioned taking a concubine again. When Madame Snow sang this song, it had a special charm. It really showed the love of a wife to her husband. For a moment, Xiao Yin, who was standing aside, was mesmerized. There were even tears in her eyes. At this moment, she seemed to see the feeling she should have when her husband married a concubine in the near future. However, Yang Chendong was not asked at all. This had something to do with the fact that he was not used to these greasy songs. At the same time, it was also because he was busy staring at Madame Snow's towering breasts. It had been 3 years since he came to this world. Although he did not get close to women on the grounds that he was still growing, and he did not even have sex with the beautiful Xiao Yin, it did not mean that he did not need it. It was just that there were too many things to do and too much energy to think about it for the time being. Today, there was no one else in the room except himself and the 3 beautiful girls. The budding of youth was somewhat uncontrollable. In particular, Madame Snow's figure was so beautiful and her skin was so white. He could not help but stare at her breasts a few more times. Madame Snow spent all day in the red light district and had seen all kinds of men. Among them, there were many men who would stare at her figure endlessly. Some of them even had very bold gazes. She felt that those men were more vulgar. Sometimes, she would feel a little embarrassed and even a little disgusted. However, today, facing the 6th young master's gaze, not only did she not feel disgusted, but she also felt a little proud, and a little happy and secretly happy. Why was she not angry, but happy? Was it because there was some kind of attraction to the 6th young master that made her not blame him at all? Or was it because she knew that he was a talented man and wanted to get close to him? Madame Snow did not know what she was thinking at the moment. However, Yang Chendong hurriedly withdrew his expression after hearing the song. At the same time, he deliberately straightened his body and used the corner of his eye to observe Xiao Yin, who was standing next to him. Fortunately, Xiao Yin had listened to the song and was completely immersed in it. She did not notice that she had lost her composure just now. Relieved, he smiled at Madame Snow, as if only she and he knew what had happened just now. He coughed softly and said, "Madame Snow's voice is really like the sound of nature, intoxicating. You flatter me, Dong Shui. I really made a fool of myself. I heard that yesterday in the Jiu Arts workshop, Dong Shui shocked the world with 3 songs. That was the sound of nature. Now, the streets and alleys of the capital are talking about it." While being modest, Madame Snow secretly pointed out what had happened last night. She also took the opportunity to tell Yang Chendong that she had come here for the 3 songs. It's just a casual composition. How can it be the sound of nature? Yang Chendong shook his head and did not admit that the song yesterday was exquisite and wonderful. Madame Snow was a little anxious when she saw that Yang Chendong had denied this matter. She thought that the 6th young master was rejecting her, so she said, "Dong Shui, I did this for the new song. Since this morning, when I heard the new song on the street, I was intoxicated and could not control myself. I sent a letter to you. Please don't refuse. As long as you are willing to teach me the new song, you can tell me any request or condition. I will do my best to satisfy you." When she said the word satisfy, Madame Snow's face was so delicate that it looked like water could be squeezed out of it. Seeing this, Yang Chendong was also very tempted. If Xiao Yin and Xiao Wei were not present, he was afraid that he would not be able to control his body. Well, only one of the 3 songs is suitable for Madame Snow. No matter how good the song is, it has to be suitable for the person. Yang Chendong forced himself to suppress the thoughts in his heart and said with a smile, "It's just 1 song. That's better than nothing. As long as you can sing 1 song, I think the business of 100 Flowers Hall will be good." Madame Snow was a little disappointed when she heard Yang Chendong's answer, but she quickly thought it through. She was not related to the Dong Shui, and it was already a great favor that he was willing to teach her a song. How could she dare to ask for more? Madame Snow accepted the reality in her heart. She bowed again and said, "Please teach me, Dong Shui." Seeing that Madame Snow was thirsty for a song, Yang Chendong did not put on airs. Instead, he said to Xiao Yin, "Bring me the guitar hanging in young master's bedroom." Xiao Yin had long wanted to hear young master's new song, so she agreed and left. Soon, she returned with the guitar and handed it to Yang Chendong. Madame Snow was very curious when she saw the instrument that looked like a pipa. It was the first time she had seen such a thing in her life. She wondered if it was the instrument in the Dong Shui's hands. While she was thinking, the guitar was gently played, and a pleasant sound came out. Then, Yang Chendong's unique baritone voice slowly rang out. The tip of the peach leaf is sharp, the willow leaf is holding up the sky. In its place, Lord Ming, listen to me carefully. The words were compact and there were no superfluous words, nor was there any decadent tone. It was just talking about the most ordinary and ordinary thing. However, the unique melody made people unable to help but like it. In fact, at the beginning of the third time, the three women could not help but hum along with it. Yang Chendong's pronunciation was very clear. Compared to last night at the Nine Arts workshop, he sang more seriously. The three girls naturally listened to him very clearly. By the fifth time, Madame Snow had mastered most of the song with her unique ability to understand music. Except for some parts that were not very accurate, she had mastered 70% to 80% of the song. Chapter 74. Not bad, Yang Chendong nodded with satisfaction after listening to Madame Shue's song. He had to admit that this woman was really talented in this aspect. Being praised by Yang Chendong, Madame Shui was happy and shy at the same time. She was also very happy because she could meet immortal Dong Shui and learn a new song. What he did next made Madame Shui even more excited and her heart beat faster. Madame Shui, you seem to like playing the zither. I'll teach you a new song. It's played with the zither. What do you think? Thank you so much, Dong Shui. Hearing that she was lucky enough to hear the second song, Madame Snow was so excited that she kept bowing with her hands folded in front of her. Well, there are no outsiders here. You don't have to be so polite. Yang Chendong was tired of watching Madame Shui say, thank you, a dozen times, so he waved his hand and said casually. But this sentence made Madame Shui blush. The fact that there were no outsiders here obviously made her think the wrong way. As Yang Chendong spoke, he had already arrived in front of the guzheng. Then, he leaned over and plucked the strings twice. In the end, he shook his head. With his level, he could barely play the guitar. He really couldn't play the guzheng. Fortunately, the tune of the next song was not complicated. Given Madame Shui's ability to understand it, it would not be a problem for her to learn it after he sang it softly. How about this? I'll sing softly, and you'll compose the music. What do you think? Yang Chendong didn't say that he didn't know how to play the zither. Madame Shui was more than happy to sing with Yang Chendong. But she was worried that she couldn't play it well, so she asked nervously and excitedly, Can I? If I say you can, you can. If you can't, you can. Yang Chendong laughed heartily and agreed. Then, he held the folding fan in his hand and paced back and forth. His lips slowly opened and closed as he sang, When will the bright moon appear? With a cup of wine in my hand, I ask the clear sky. I wonder what year it is in the heavenly palace. I want to ride the wind and return home, but I'm afraid it's too cold at the top of the Jade Palace. When I dance, it's like dancing in the shadows. It's not like being in the human world. A water melody of Su Shur of the song Dynasty slowly appeared. It was just an ancient poem, but after being processed by Yang Chendong, it became a very light and unique song. Once this song was played, it immediately gave people a refreshing feeling. It made people feel more intimate and at the same time, they also experienced a different kind of beautiful music. Yang Chendong sang softly, and Madame Shui began to play the guzheng with encouragement in her eyes. In the beginning, they didn't cooperate well because they weren't familiar with each other. But after a while, they had a tacit understanding. When the song was played together, it really gave people a feeling that this song should only exist in the heavens and could only be heard a few times in the human world. After singing softly for 2 more times, Yang Chendong stopped talking and let Madame Shui do everything. Madame Shui talked and sang by herself. Her charms soon surpassed Yang Chendong's and was far above his. The song made Xiao Yin and Xiao Wei feel very emotional. Why didn't they think of making this song into a song before? At this moment, their gazes towards Yang Chendong were filled with worship and reverence. Hu Mansion. Suddenly, a horse carriage drove in from the side door, and a burly man jumped down from the carriage. He looked at the Hu clan's gatekeeper and said, "This is an invitation card from my family's lord." The gatekeeper stepped forward and respectfully picked it up. When he saw the words, "Crown Prince washes his horse, Yang Qindong," written on it, he understood. After knowing the other party's identity, he smiled and said, "What can I do for you, Lord Yang?" "It's like this. My lord has developed a new kind of soft paper called toilet paper, which is prepared for the nobles after they go to the toilet." As he spoke, the burly man held 2 bags of things in his hands and handed them to the gatekeeper. "One is for Minister Hu, and the other is for Lord Hu. Please accept it." After putting down the bags, the burly man left. If Hu Zhangning was here right now, he would definitely recognize him as the Beta Persei who had fought with his 2 subordinates in Jianghu Mansion and won. The same scene didn't only appear in front of the Hu Mansion, but also in front of all 5th-rank officials in the capital. In the end, Tiger's Mane led the team to deliver the toilet paper to the Imperial Palace. The difference was that the Imperial Palace received a larger proportion, 10 large bags. The other officials only received 1 bag, while the 2 5th-rank officials in the Hu family naturally received 2 bags. Everyone who received Yang Qindong's gift accepted it. Even Yu Qian, the Ministry of War's attendant who called himself Wen Tianxiang, received a gift. For the family, this was something that rarely happened. The reason why Yu Qian accepted the gift was because he wanted to see what the Crown Prince washes his horse was up to. What was he up to? However, when he saw that the gift was actually toilet paper used after he went to the toilet, he was stunned speechless. This thing was indeed very soft, and was naturally an excellent item for cleansing the body. However, giving this kind of thing was somewhat lacking in the grandeur of a refined scholar. Thinking that this thing probably wasn't worth much, Yu Qian left it here and didn't return it, which made his wife overjoyed. Hu Mansion. The gatekeeper took the 2 bags of toilet paper to the backyard and met with Hu Zhangning's wife. Hu Zhangning's wife, Hu Yushi, was already old and no longer managed the backyard. The Hu family didn't split up, but Hu Zhangning's wife was in charge of the backyard. Madame Hu's surname was Wang, and she was known as Hu Wangshi. When she saw the 2 large bags of toilet paper, she blushed. After she figured out what they were for, she was even more speechless. This 6th young master was also messing around. How could such a thing be so publicly delivered to the residents and even handed to the gatekeeper? Scholars loved face. Although eating, drinking, and going to the toilet was a long-term emotion that no one could avoid, it wasn't good to give such things so publicly. However, since it was already delivered, it wasn't good to return it. Thus, she ordered people to prepare to send the things to the backyard's warehouse. As for whether it was useful or not, she, a woman, couldn't personally try it out due to her face. However, before the item could be sent out, the sound of hurried panting and panicked running could be heard. The person who came was Hu Yan. She heard the maid, Xiao Qing, say that the 6th young master sent someone to send a gift. She was overjoyed and ran over to take a look. "Mother, the East Marshal sent something to our residence?" As soon as she entered the hall, Hu Yan's beautiful voice, which was like an oriole's, sounded before she could stand firm. "Yan, slow down. Don't fall again. You're almost a big girl. Why are you still so careless?" Seeing that it was her daughter who came, Hu Wangshi couldn't help but say coquettishly, "Mother, where are the things that the East Marshal sent us?" Hu Yan didn't listen to her mother's nagging, but asked anxiously. "That's it." Knowing that if she didn't answer, her daughter would continue to ask, Hu Wangshi simply pointed to the 2 bags of things on the ground that were about to be put into the warehouse. "Ah!" Hu Yan first exclaimed, then walked in front of the 2 bags and casually picked one up to take a closer look. However, it seemed that this wasn't enough. She directly opened the other bag, pulled it out, and rubbed it in her hands. Seeing Hu Yan's actions, Hu Wangshi's face turned red and said, "Yan, what are you doing?" But what? What is this thing? It feels so weak. Is it used to write big words? It doesn't seem right." Even though Hu Yan thought that she was smart, when she saw the toilet paper for the first time, she still couldn't see its use. Yen, come here. Hu Wangshi, who had always been educated to be well-mannered, felt that some words were too shameful to say. She pulled her daughter in front of her and then whispered something in her ear. Ah! Hu Yan's face changed. First, she blushed, then she spat softly and said in a voice that only she could hear, "How shameless of you to give me such things." Yen, what did you say? Hu Wangshi obviously didn't hear clearly. Nothing. Hu Yan panicked and said, "I just said that this thing looks soft and seems to be suitable for that. How about this, I'll take it away first. If it's useful, I'll send it back to you." After saying that, without waiting for Hu Wangshi's agreement, she and little Qing each carried a bag of toilet paper, turned around, and ran out. Hey, slow down, slow down. Hu Wangshi didn't care about the 2 bags of toilet paper. She didn't know its use at all. She was just worried that her daughter would run too fast and fall down. This was like a small episode in her life. Hu Wangshi didn't care at all. Not only that, many officials who received the toilet paper didn't care too much. It wasn't until the next day when they went to the imperial court that they realized how precious the toilet paper was. In the side hall of the Yang Manor, Madame Shui learned 2 new songs, Exploring Qingshui River and Wishing We Last Forever. She was very happy. After singing it a few times and receiving Yang Qindong's affirmation, she was overjoyed. "Thank you for teaching me, Dong Shui. But I don't know if these 2 new songs can be sung in Baihua Hall," Madame Shui said carefully when she was talking. She was afraid that Yang Qindong wouldn't agree. "No problem. You can sing them if you want." Yang Qindong smiled. It always took a process for a new song to be accepted by the world. Baihua Hall could expand its influence. Why not? As for the copyright of the new songs, Yang Qindong didn't care at all. He didn't know how many songs like this there were. If it weren't for the fact that the lyrics and music of these 2 songs were clean and suitable for zither and pipa, he could teach more. Seeing that Yang Qindong agreed, Madame Shui was overjoyed. Chapter 75. Yang Qindong did not stop her. Although he could not be Lady Shui's master, he had still taught her, so it was only right for her to bow to him. After bowing, she saw that it was noon and knew that Dong Shui was probably going to eat. Not daring to disturb him, she happily left the Yang clan manor with her maid Xiaowei. Not long after they left, news came from the capital. Tonight, the 100 Flowers Hall of the Red Light District would be performing 2 new songs. They would only be sung once, so there were not many chances, so please make good use of them. The moment this news came out, many young masters who believed themselves to be elegant began to make arrangements with the young master to attend 100 Flowers Hall that night. Putting aside how lively the city had become, in the Yang clan manor, as Qiao Yin ate the delicious food that Yi Qiu'er had made, she softly asked Yang Qindong, "Young master, didn't you say that you wanted to take Lady Shui and Lady Xiang for your own use? You said that they were both talents, so why didn't you say a single word about them?" Yang Qindong ate the food in his mouth as he shook his head and said, "Haste makes waste. If I act now, it will inevitably make people think that this young master is taking advantage of the situation. Let's wait. Fortunately, there is still time." Yang Qindong naturally had his own plans. Not saying it now did not mean that he would not say it in the future. It was just that the time was not right. He understood the principle of more haste, less speed. Although with his current status, it was not impossible for him to forcefully take her away. However, if he did so, it would inevitably give others a reason to criticize him. He was afraid that his reputation of bullying women would be tarnished. This was not something that he wanted to see. In comparison, Yang Qindong preferred the feeling of success when the conditions were right. But before that, he still had many other things to do. For example, there was one thing that he needed Xiao Yin to do. "Yin, how about the young master arrange something for you?" Upon hearing that there was something to do, Xiao Yin hurriedly put down her bowl and chopsticks, an excited look on her face. What is it? It's not difficult. I just want Yin, to make a trip to the capital and find some children between the ages of 14 and 18. Both men and women are fine. 50 of each. They must have good looks, good figures, and must be as tall as possible. Then, we will hire all of them, sign a 3-year contract, and bring them back to the manor. Yang Chendong also put down his bowl and chopsticks, thinking of another plan, and said with a smile. Yang Chendong was about to start looking for the immortal abode's attendants. A total of 100 people were prepared. Among them, the men were waiters, all wearing black jackets. The women were waitresses, all wearing black cheongsams. This was the uniform that was put on. This would give you a very shocking first impression. However, it wasn't enough for them to merely be dressed in the same way. They also needed to be consistent in their pace and actions. In addition, they also needed to have a deep understanding of the immortal abode's range of experience. If a guest were to ask them about something they didn't understand, they would know how to explain it and what to do next. The matter of the clothes was easy to resolve. Long before he left Crimson City, the head of the garment factory, Zhou Hua, had already made the clothes according to his request. Now, they were all in the Yang family village. However, it took a lot of time to develop their physical qualities. For this reason, when Yang Chendong handed the task to Xiao Yin, he especially emphasized, don't be afraid of spending money. As long as someone is willing to work for us, we will give them 2 taels of silver per month. However, you must also tell them that those who can endure hardship and can read are priority. If someone can't take it and wants to leave, not only will they not receive a single cent, they will also have to pay us to make up for their losses. Yang Chendong didn't really want their money. With Crimson City as their base of operations, Gao Xiong and the others had already taken control of the entire region of the sea. Anyone who wanted to pass by would either have their goods stolen, or would have to pay an extremely heavy price before being allowed to pass. This caused a large amount of money to flow in from the sea. Yang Chendong didn't lack money. Not to mention, once the immortal abode opened for business, it would definitely make a lot of money. 2 taels of silver per person per month really wasn't much. Of course, this so-called not much also depended on who it was compared to. Ordinary citizens, especially children in their teens, would definitely have very few opportunities to earn that much money. In fact, they might not even have the chance to do so. Yang Chendong only had Xiao Yin do this because he understood the situation. Yang Chendong also believed that with Xiao Yin's personality, she would definitely do a good job. Moreover, anyone who could catch her eye shouldn't be too bad. After all, she had followed him for such a long time. She didn't have much else, but when it came to experience, few people could compare to her. After sending Xiao Yin out of the Yang clan manor, he arranged for Qiu Vi and Yang Wu to protect her. At the same time, Qiu Vi and a group of guards also left the manor. With his reputation as Yang Chendong, the chances of anything happening were extremely low. Zhi Chendong turned around and entered his study. His figure flickered as he reappeared in the large warehouse. As soon as he entered the warehouse, Yang Chendong headed for the club. There was a television and a video player there, as well as the complete Yi Zhong Tian analysis of the 3 kingdoms. He had come here to study. He wanted to make a Yang Chendong analysis of the 3 kingdoms. It took Yang Chendong 4 hours to come out of the study room. When the sun was about to set, Yang Chendong walked out. He saw Tiger's mane waiting for him. The young master's study couldn't be entered unless there was something important. Moreover, when entering, one had to first pull on the doorbell, a so-called drawstring device. Once one pulled on the doorbell, one would be able to hear the sound from the inside. Only after obtaining permission could one enter. This was Yang Chendong's requirement for everyone around him. Even Xiao Yin and Tiger's mane weren't allowed to break this rule. This was also a habit that Yang Chendong had instilled in everyone. This way, when he needed to enter the large warehouse, he didn't have to worry about someone suddenly appearing outside to disturb him. When he saw Tiger's Mane waiting for him outside with a calm expression, he knew that there was nothing urgent. As Yang Qindong walked over, he asked Tiger's Mane, "Has everything been taken care of?" "It's been taken care of. All the fifth-rank officials in the capital, including the Duke's estates, Marquis estates, Count's estates, and even the Imperial Palace, have been sent over according to the number that was previously agreed upon," Tiger's Mane respectfully replied. "Very good. Is there anyone who doesn't accept them?" "There isn't." Tiger's Mane pondered for a moment. Indeed, there wasn't any news of anyone confiscating toilet paper. Thus, he nodded affirmatively and said, "They've all accepted them." Not bad. This answer was somewhat out of Yang Qindong's expectations. He originally thought that there would be independent people like Yu Qian who wouldn't accept gifts. He didn't expect them to accept all of them. It seemed like they thought that toilet paper wasn't worth much, which was why they accepted it so easily. Since that was the case, he would give them a heavy blow later on. He wanted them to understand that toilet paper wasn't a piece of white paper. It was an existence that was much more valuable than that. Do we have enough toilet paper in the warehouse?" "It's sufficient. It's definitely enough to deal with the capital. Also, Crimson City is speeding up. The first batch of goods is already on its way to the capital. Wang Zhen has also sent someone over to deliver the Eastern Faction Depot's pass token. It can guarantee that the goods will be able to pass through without any obstructions." Tiger's Mane explained the matter of the Eastern Faction Depot's pass token. Hee. Upon hearing this, Yang Qindong chuckled and said, "That Wang Zhen is a smart person. He knows that it's hard to get anything back without any effort. This is good. It'll save us a lot of trouble." "Yes. With the Eastern Faction Depot's pass, our goods will be safer along the way. It will also save us a lot of trouble. We can also save a lot of filial piety along the way," Tiger's Mane said excitedly. "No." Yang Qindong stretched out his index finger and said, "We still have to pay the necessary filial piety along the way. You must know that in many cases, a county official isn't as good as a local official. There's no need to make enemies and trouble just to save some money." Seeing how certain Yang Qindong was, Tiger's Mane's expression turned cold and he said, "Yes, Tiger's Mane will remember it. I'll instruct them later. By the way, young Master 4 sent an invitation. He said that there will be a new song at 100 Flowers Hall tonight. He invited young Master 4 to go with him." "No need. I still have to make all kinds of drinks with the cook, Chioer, tonight. I won't be going to 100 Flowers Hall. But you have to send someone to keep an eye on the situation there and report back to this young Master 4. Yang Qindong shook his head. Although he also wanted to see Madame Snow's elegance, there were too many things that he needed to do. He had to do everything himself. When things were on the right track, he could relax a little. "Yes." Tiger's Mane replied and went to arrange things. Yang Qindong strode toward the kitchen in the backyard. Xiao Yin hadn't returned yet, so he seized the time to go to the kitchen. Otherwise, when she came back, it was inevitable that she would warn him to stay away from the kitchen. The red light district of the capital. At this moment, 100 Flowers Hall was packed with people. Even though there was still an hour before the start of the competition, the place was already filled with people. For example, Su Qingzong, Zhang De, Wang Si, and the others who had appeared at the Nine Arts Workshop yesterday were also here. Furthermore, they were seated closer to the stage. They were all regulars of Nine Arts Workshop and had a rather special status there. But after listening to Yang Qindong's 3 new songs yesterday, their attitudes had changed. They had naturally lost interest in the songs that they had heard countless times before. Hearing that there was a new song in the 100 Flowers Hall, and that it was sent back by Madame Xue after she went to the Yangjie village during the day, how could she hold back? She immediately ordered the servants at home to book a table here. They weren't the only ones. The news of Nine Arts Workshop's new song had already spread throughout the capital. It was said that this matter had even been called to the morning court. Even the emperor knew of this matter. Once this matter was hyped up, everyone naturally knew about it. Countless people naturally came because of the fame, and for a moment, 100 Flowers Hall was packed to the brim. Chapter 76. Not only that, some round tables, which could only seat 4 or 5 people, were now filled with 7 or 8 people. Although it was a little crowded, it proved that there was a lively scene here. Mu Lily, the procuress, was a famous courtesan in the capital when she was young. Now she was in charge of the business of Baihua Hall. Although she was less than 30 years old, she was still very charming. When she saw the scene today, she couldn't stop smiling. Well, let's get busy. Don't neglect the guests. This is a good opportunity for our Baihua Hall to become famous. Mu Lily's eyes were almost narrowed into slits. She walked in the hall and greeted the guests warmly. She was afraid that she would be impolite and cause trouble because there were too many people. However, Mu Lily obviously thought too much. Today, everyone was here for the new song. At least, before they heard the new song, no one would casually cause trouble. This also made it so that although the number of people in the hall was several times more than usual, the order was not disrupted. After the performance, Madame Shui was still practicing. After all, she had only sung during the day. It was indeed a little hasty for her to perform at night. Moreover, there were so many guests today. What if she screwed up? What would she do? Wouldn't those nobles tear down 100 Flowers Hall? She had been on the stage many times, but she didn't know why she was so nervous today. She remembered that when she went on the stage for the first time, she was as nervous as she was now. Miss, you don't have to be so nervous. Although I have just learned this song, other than Dong Shui, no one else knows what the original song is like. On the other hand, Xiao Wei was thinking of ways to comfort her young miss. Xiao Wei's words made sense, but Madame Shui still shook her head stubbornly. No, I have to live up to Dong Shui's trust. By the way, Xiao Wei, is Dong Shui here tonight? Xiao Wei wanted to lie to her miss, who was full of expectation. However, she knew that she could not lie to her miss when she went on the stage. She shook her head reluctantly. Dong Shui didn't come. He didn't come? Obviously, Madame Shui was somewhat disappointed. Judging from the way Dong Shui looked at her during the day, he should still like her. At the very least, he admired her. If that was the case, why couldn't he come to 100 Flowers Hall today when he could go to 9 Arts Workshop yesterday? Seeing that her young miss was in low spirits, Xiao Wei was afraid that something bad would happen. She quickly added, I've sent someone to check. Dong Shui didn't go to Jianghu Arts Workshop today. Perhaps this was the only good news. At least it proved that Yang Chendong was not biased. I see. Sure enough, Madame Snow's expression became much better after hearing that. As a woman in the entertainment field, perhaps her competitive nature was stronger. When she heard that Dong Shui didn't go anywhere, her mood became much better. The guests at the front desk did not know what was going on backstage, nor did they know that the heart of their goddess, who had always wanted to get close to her, had already flown out of the venue and was no longer with the guests. Time passed little by little, and it was getting closer and closer to the start of the show. The geisha, who was warming up the scene, had already gone up the stage. However, both the performers and the audience were obviously absent-minded. They were all waiting for the 2 new songs to come on the stage. Finally, Madame Snow, who was dressed in white, went up the stage accompanied by her maid, Xiao Wei, accompanied by a burst of enthusiastic applause. Of course, no one knew whether it was a farewell applause. Lady Shui's clothes were as white as snow, and her skin was white and tender. Her skin was as clean as a baby's. Coupled with her graceful figure, she received a wave of applause as soon as she stepped onto the stage. The applause went on for a long time until Madame Snow sat down on the guzheng. At that moment, the whole venue became very quiet. In the silence, under the eager eyes of the audience, the sound of the guzheng rang softly, accompanied by Madame Snow's pleasant monologue. A long time ago, there was a firearms camp. Song Lao San and his family lived next to it. They had nothing to do, the monologue was to let more people know the story so that they could understand the main idea of the song. It was also specially requested by Yang Chendong. At least, the monologue was still needed before the song became a hit. When people became familiar with the song, the monologue could be skipped at any time. The monologue made people's expressions change again and again. From the monologue, they seemed to have seen the tragic ending of the young couple who loved each other. In the corner of the hall, a handsome scholar with a white face was listening to the monologue with tears in his eyes. Beside her, there was a handsome attendant accompanying her. However, she seemed to have forgotten her role, which was to look after the young master. At this moment, her eyes were also filled with tears. She was like a dam that was about to burst, and the rain could pour down at any time. Little Qing, how do you think he came up with such a tragic story? Is Little Six really referring to himself? Did he really have such an unforgettable love when he was young? The seated young master gently wiped away the tears that were about to flow out and asked the attendant standing beside him. Little, master, I don't know. The attendant shook her head and said in a choked voice. In the hall, many people were moved and affected by the story, but none of them shed tears like the two girls. The situation here was naturally noticed by the diners at the surrounding tables. Some people naturally looked over. Lower your head. Noticing that some people were looking at her table, the young master quickly lowered her head, and so did the attendant who accompanied her. The two girls reacted quickly. In addition, the place was a little remote and the light was dim, so the others could not see what was going on. Then, they all turned back to the stage. Sensing that other people were not looking at them, the master and the attendant looked up and made faces at each other. It was also at this moment that their mischievous nature was revealed. If Lord Hu Zhangning was here, he would definitely be shocked to discover that these two so-called young masters and errand boys were actually his precious daughter, Hu Yan, and her personal maid, Xiao Qing. They came here naturally because they heard that Baihua Hall was going to sing a new song at night. They also knew that Madame Shui had just returned from Yangzhe village during the day, which made them even more curious. After some discussion, they decided to come here in person to see what Madame Shui looked like. Let's see if this new song is really as good as the rumors outside say, that it can really make people unforgettable, and has the effect of making people feel relaxed and happy. The tip of the peach leaf is sharp, and the willow leaf is holding up the sky. Lord Ming in his position, listen to me carefully. After the narration, the song officially began. With Madame Shui's beautiful voice, a refreshing song entered people's ears, which made people feel comfortable and comfortable. Unlike Yang Chendong's voice, Madame Shui's voice seemed to be sadder. Even Su Qingzong, Zhang De, Wang Si, and Yang Yang had the same feeling. There was a beginning and an end. When the song came to an end, there was silence in the field at first. Then, there was an earth-shattering applause. It seemed to form a heat wave, which was about to melt Madame Shui on the platform. Thank you. Seeing the effect, Madame Shui stood up and said, "Greetings to everyone." Then she slowly sat down and put her slender fingers on the zither. The tune of "Wishing People Forever" began to reverberate in the Hall of Blossoms. People were first attracted by the clean tone of the song. Before long, Madame Shui's beautiful voice rang out. When will the moon be bright? With a cup of wine in my hand, I asked the sky. I wonder what year it is in the heavenly palace. Jiu Arts Workshop. It was not as lively as yesterday. In fact, it was even quieter than before. Although Madame Shui's name had been hung outside the Jiu Arts Workshop today, and it did attract some young master and child masters, their status could not be compared with that of the guests in Baihua Hall. On the stage, Madame Shui just sang 2 old songs and then left with a sad face. As soon as she went backstage, Cui Na, the procuress, came up to her and said, "Sister Hanxiang, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have stopped you from going to Dong Shui yesterday." "No, Sister Cui, it's not your fault. I thought too much. I've decided to go to Yang village tomorrow. No matter what, I'll ask Dong Shui to teach me 2 songs." Madame Shui looked very determined and confident. She regretted it when she learned that Madame Shui had gone to Yang village during the day. Then the news came out that Madame Snow had learned 2 new songs and had gotten Dong Shui's permission to sing them in public for the first time in the 100 Flowers Hall that night. She regretted it even more. Yang Chendong was the first to come to Jiu Art's workshop, so she had the advantage. However, she did not seize the opportunity and gave all the benefits to others. How could Madame Shui, who still had the title of courtesan, accept this? Whether it was to fight back or for the future business of Jiu Art's workshop, she needed to see Dong Shui again. She wanted to humbly ask for advice and restore her prestige. The curfew was about to start. A large number of people in Baihua Hall began to leave and go their separate ways. In the crowd, 2 young masters, Hu Yan and Little Qing, who were dressed as young masters, were hurriedly walking in the direction of the Hu mansion. They had come out in disguise this time. If their grandfather, father, and mother found out, it would be a scandal. The dignified young mistress of the Hu family went to the red light district and went to Baihua Hall to listen to songs. Once such a shocking matter was spread out, the Hu family would definitely be criticized for not having a good upbringing. Even if Hu Yan could find a suitable marriage, it would be hard to say. Chapter 77. The 2 of them ran all the way before the curfew. When they arrived at the small alley in front of the back door of the Hu estate, Hu Yan supported herself against the wall and panted as she spoke to her maidservant Xiao Qing, who also looked as if she had fallen apart. Let's rest for a while before entering the estate. Otherwise, if father sees us, we will be in big trouble. What are you afraid of me seeing you? A deep male voice rang out beside her. It wasn't loud, but it sounded like a clap of thunder in Hu Yan's ears. Ah! Ghost! As soon as she heard someone else's voice, the servant girl Xiao Qing screamed instinctively and then hid behind Miss Hu Yan. Xiao Qing, what are you doing? I can't tell. That's my father's voice. However, Hu Yan was still able to keep her composure. This was mainly because she had heard that voice for so many years and was already very familiar with it. Hu Yan grabbed the panicked Xiao Qing and lowered her head as if she had done something wrong. Father, I'm just bored at home, so I went out for a stroll. Stroll? Gao Sheng, you tell me. His voice suddenly became more severe, and 2 figures flashed out of the alley. It was Hu Zhangning and one of his subordinates, Gao Sheng, one of the 2 people who had been taught a lesson by Beta Persei in the Jian Estate's Yang family mansion. Yes, sir. In the afternoon, Xiao Qing found Lieutenant Sun Chuang, the other person who had been beaten by Beta Persei, and asked him to book a table at 100 Flowers Hall. Enough. Without waiting for Gao Sheng to continue, Hu Yan had already interrupted him. Since her father had even investigated this, there was no point in explaining anything. Father, I was just curious about what the 2 new songs were like, so you dared to go to 100 Flowers Hall? Do you know what kind of place that is? Do you know what will happen if your identity is exposed, or if you meet a lecher? Do you know? Hu Zhangning was obviously very angry, and scolded Hu Yan for a long time in one breath. In the end, Hu Zhangning, who had been criticizing Hu Yan for a long time, made the final decision. Hu Yan did not abide by the rules. She will be grounded for a month. Maid Xiao Qing didn't do what a maid should do. She didn't take good care of her master. She was punished with half a year's salary and 2 beatings. Gao Sheng sent someone to carry out the punishment. Lieutenant Sun Chuang is reckless. His salary will be deducted for half a year, and he will also be punished with 10 planks. Hu Zhangning angrily turned around and left, leaving behind Hu Yan with an incredulous look on her face. Father, you can punish me however you want, but don't hit Xiao Qing. It's too painful to hit her with 2 strokes of the paddle. Ignoring his daughter, Hu Zhangning walked faster and faster, as if he would change his mind if he slowed down a little. Unable to call out to her father, Hu Yan had no choice but to look at Gao Sheng for help. Lieutenant Gao, can you write down little Qing's 2 paddles first? I will go and plead with my father, okay? No, we have to carry out my lord's orders. Gao Xing shook his head. This time, Hu Zhangning was truly angry. Even Lieutenant Sun Chuang had to be punished with 10 planks. If he dared to disobey orders and not hit Xiao Qing, then he would be the one to be hit. Yang Chendong didn't know that Hu Yan had disguised herself as a man and gone to the 100 Flowers Hall to listen to a new song, only to be caught red-handed by Lord Hu Zhangning and put under house arrest. He was currently in the kitchen with Yi Qiu'er, experimenting with various drinks in preparation for the opening of the immortal abode. What he didn't know was that on this very night, Gao Xiong's naval and land forces launched a joint operation to seize Flag Mountain. In the early years of the Ming Dynasty, the old prince of Zhongshan, Shang Baji, conquered Shannon. Together with Shan Bei and Zhongshan, they formed the unified Ryukyu Kingdom, the first Shang dynasty. This was also the golden age of the Ryukyu Kingdom. Its commerce was highly developed, and it traded with the Ming Dynasty, Korea, Southeast Asia, and Japan. However, all of this had just begun when it was forced to stop because of Yang Chendong. Gao Xiong led a powerful navy to harass and surround the Ryukyu Islands. This caused the Ryukyu Kingdom to suffer great losses. Its maritime trade was hindered, and it became a closed country. Qiqian City was occupied, and the sea routes were sealed. This caused the 6th-generation king to die of anger, and the successor was the 7th-generation king, Shangde, who was still underage. Shangde was only 12 years old. Because of his father's early death, he took over the throne. However, even though he was the king of a territory, he still couldn't change the current situation of the Ryukyu Islands. He had sent out ships to break out of the encirclement and inform the outside world of the situation. However, without exception, all of the ships he sent were sunk as soon as they left the harbor. It had to be said that the Ryukyu Kingdom was also plagued with misfortune. It had only been less than 20 years since the first prince of Zhongshan, Baji, had taken over, and several kings had died. They had either died of illness or met with mishaps while out at sea. Now, all of the burden had fallen on the young Shangde's shoulders. How could he not be worried? After trying all sorts of methods, he finally decided to stay put and wait for reinforcements. Perhaps after a while, someone would discover that something was wrong with the Ryukyu Islands, and they would send people to investigate. Shangde still held on to a sliver of hope, but Gao Xiong couldn't wait any longer. Before Yang Chendong left Qiqian City, he had told him that once the population was sufficient, he had to think about expansion. The first thing he had to do was to take over the entire Ryukyu Kingdom and occupy the entire island. Now, every few days, there would be ships going back and forth between the Black Dock and Qiqian City. The people on those ships were all Han people of the Great Ming Dynasty. They had all been secretly obtained by Leng Song during Deng Maoqi's uprising. Leng Song completely obeyed Yang Chendong's orders. He plundered everyone he saw and robbed everything he saw. Qiqian City, which originally had a low population base, began to rapidly expand. Although he didn't see any danger yet, Gao Xiong still remembered what the 6th young master had said: if a man doesn't think far ahead, he will definitely have immediate worries. For this reason, he decided to attack Qishan, which was the closest to Qiqian City, in the southwest. Based on the principle of obtaining the greatest victory with the least casualties, Gao Xiong made a detailed pre-battle plan before he made his move. He gathered the 1st Company Commander 1st Lieutenant Xiao Feng and 3rd Company 1st Lieutenant Chang Tingshan at home and came up with a plan to attack Qishan from both inside and outside. At the beginning of the 9th month of the 13th year of the Great Ming Dynasty, when Yang Chendong had just arrived in the capital and was still stirring up trouble, Gao Xiong started his operation. That night, the wind was strong. Especially for an island like Ryukyu, the wind was even stronger at night. The flag on the city wall of Qishan swayed vigorously and the flagpole seemed as though it would break at any moment. On such a night, it was rare for anyone to come out. It was the same even on the city wall. The few soldiers of the Shang dynasty who were in charge of night duty had already hidden in a small hut to rest. In the small hut, 20 soldiers were all squeezed together. This made Captain Li Luan unhappy. If everyone is here to rest, who will be guarding the city wall? What if those pirates attack us? Captain, don't worry too much. With such a strong sea breeze, wouldn't they be blown away by the wind if they wanted to climb up the city wall, which is more than 30 feet tall? Besides, I don't think there's anything wrong with those pirates. Occasionally, when the weather is good, us brothers can see them. Those people on the other side are wearing good clothes, and all of them have oily faces. They must be eating well, unlike us, who are often in arrears with the military pay. The lives of the commoners will only be harder. One of the soldiers didn't seem to be afraid of Li Luan. After he complained, the other soldiers also started to talk. Although Li Luan was a little angry, he knew that his prestige wasn't enough to make these people shut up. Speaking of which, he was also angry. His wife and children didn't even have enough to eat, which made him, the captain, extremely dispirited. While everyone was sighing and complaining about how they were born in the wrong time, they didn't know that in such a strong sea breeze, Lang Feng had already used the triangular anchor and other equipment to climb up the city wall, which was more than 30 feet tall. Such a city wall might seem very tall to others, but to the members of Lang Feng who often had to climb it, it was just child's play. In less than half an incense's time, a row of 30 vanguard members had all arrived at the top of the city wall. The wind is so strong. Use your guns. Company Commander Xiao Feng, who followed the first batch of members up the city wall, decisively ordered the soldiers to put away their crossbows and switch to their Type 95 submachine guns when he heard the whistling wind. The 30 people's movements were uniform. In just a few seconds, they held their guns in their hands and performed a pre-battle inspection. When the first person raised his right thumb to indicate that the inspection was complete, the other 29 people did the same thing. Everything was done silently and swiftly. It was obvious that this wasn't the first time such a drill was conducted. Xiao Feng observed the performance of the Lang Feng soldiers. He nodded slightly and made a gesture to disperse and surround them. The 30 soldiers immediately moved forward in a fan formation. During this period of time, no one made a single sound. In the dark night, they were like ghosts that appeared and disappeared unpredictably, approaching the small hut on the city tower that could be used as a residence. In the small house, the soldiers were still complaining. As the captain, Li Luan had long shut his mouth and narrowed his eyes. If he had the time to argue, he might as well take a rest. This way, he could eat less tomorrow morning and bring more food back for his children. Sigh, I really don't know when these days will end. Thinking about the current situation, Li Luan, who was sighing in his heart, suddenly heard a sound from the door. Then, he stood up with a jolt. He knew that the 20 soldiers in his squad were all in the small house. The only ones who could appear here at this time were either his superior had come to check on them or the enemy had ambushed them. Chapter 78. Li Luan's reaction wasn't slow, but the person's reaction was faster. Before Li Luan could pull out his sword, a black muzzle was already pointed at him. Not only that, there were several black muzzles that were pointed at his subordinates. Don't move, those who surrender will be spared. Those who resist will be killed. A loud voice sounded. It was the voice of the company commander, Xiao Feng. As soon as he finished speaking, bah! A gunshot rang out. One of the Shang Dynasty's soldiers clutched his chest and fell to the ground with a look of unwillingness and shock. In his hand, he had already pulled out a long sword and was about to slash forward. One of the Lang Feng soldiers felt the danger and killing intent. Without hesitation, he opened fire and ended the life of the enemy who wanted to resist. The sound of the gunshot was loud and clear in the room, but in the night wind, the sound could not travel far. With one person dead, the room became much quieter. Then, the captain, Li Luan, felt that his life was being threatened. He didn't want any of his brothers to die here, so he shouted anxiously, "Listen to me, don't move. Take out your weapons and throw them on the ground. I think that since these people said that they would be spared if they surrendered, they should be true to their words. That's right, we will keep our promise. The prerequisite is that you guys have to listen to us too. If you guys have any ulterior motives, you will end up like that person." Xiao Feng looked at Li Luan's performance and nodded his head in satisfaction. However, in order to not cause any more problems, he couldn't help but threaten him. When the black muzzle was aimed at him again, Li Luan felt his body tense up. He clearly saw the scene just now. This black metal thing could easily take a person's life. Not wanting to die, he hurriedly threw his sword and scabbard on the ground. At the same time, he covered his head with both hands and squatted down. With Li Luan taking the lead, the other 18 brothers followed suit and threw down their weapons, crouching on the ground with their hands on their heads. Very good. Xiao Feng praised, then gestured to Ling Feng who was at the side. A few of them took out ropes from their backpacks and tied up all 19 of them, including Li Luan. Just as he was done, the door opened again. A soldier in camouflage uniform walked in. He stood straight and saluted. "Sir, the city gate has been opened by our brothers hiding in the city. 2nd platoon, 3rd platoon, 3rd company, and 1,000 auxiliary soldiers have entered the city. Company Commander Tingshan, may I ask if we can besiege the barracks in the city?" "Yes, everything is going according to plan. Also, tell the brothers that the auxiliary troops are not to participate in the battle. Go and maintain order in the city. As long as the civilians do not cause trouble and stay in their homes, they are not to be harmed. Most of the people in the city are Han." Xiao Feng replied with a military salute. "Yes." The soldier who responded with a military salute turned around to pass down the order. Xiao Feng also prepared to bring people to carry out the battle plan. At this moment, Li Luan who was squatting on the ground spoke, "Sir, are you the pirates on the other side?" "What? Do you have any questions?" Xiao Feng turned around and asked, a sharp look flashing in his eyes. Naturally, he did not like the word pirate. It was only because the 6th young master said that it was not good to expose their strength. Thus, they had no choice but to call themselves pirates. Feeling that Xiao Feng's gaze could kill, Li Luan instinctively lowered his head and avoided it. Then, he said in a small voice, "If you can really not harm the civilians in the city, I am willing to be your guide. There are many of my brothers in the barracks. I think I can help persuade them." Li Luan volunteered himself for 2 reasons. Firstly, he had long lost confidence in the #1 Shang dynasty. Even the soldiers did not have enough to eat, let alone the common people. Secondly, the weakness of the Shang dynasty made them feel extremely aggrieved. After being surrounded and forbidden from entering the sea, and not being able to send out any ships, they had actually holed themselves up like turtles and refused to move. It was as if they couldn't think of any solution. Instead, they had placed all their hopes on the outside, praying that others would discover their tragic situation and that someone would come to their rescue. This was completely a lucky move. It was no different from spending 2 yuan and waiting for 5 million. The possibility of them being rescued was close to 0. Thirdly, he had just witnessed Lang Feng's prowess. With 1 shot, one of his subordinates was killed. This should be the gun that Deming was talking about. However, from the looks of it, it seemed to be even more powerful than the gun in the legends. Faced with such a powerful weapon, what could the Shang dynasty use to fight them? Fourthly, although he did not have much contact with them, he had heard some things about these pirates since he was guarding Qishan, which was the closest place to Qiqian city. They were completely different from other pirates. They did not bully civilians. When they robbed, they only robbed boats and people. However, they did not kill civilians or merchants. With all these knowledge and after seeing Lang Feng's mental state, Li Luan had the idea of helping them. Not only could he redeem himself, he might even be able to save more of his brothers in the barracks. Li Luan's volunteering naturally made Xiao Feng overjoyed. "Alright, if you do this well, not only can you save more people from the flames of war, you can also save more lives. You can also be considered to have performed a meritorious deed. How about this, untie him and bring him along with us." Li Luan regained his freedom. However, there were 2 Lang Feng beside him so that they could restrain him immediately if he made any strange movements. With Li Luan leading the way, the cold vanguard moved even faster. With the cover provided by the strong wind at night, when the 1st company and the 3rd company, a total of 200 cold vanguards, arrived at the entrance of Qishan military camp. The soldiers there were still not alerted at all. Rocket launcher team, get ready. Everyone, load your guns. If there's any resistance, kill. As soon as they arrived in front of the barracks, Xiao Feng and 3rd Company's Chang Tingshan looked at each other and gave out the order for the battle. In an instant, the 200 people completed their actions silently. Even in the dark, all the Lang Feng's actions of checking their guns were still swift and perfect. All of this made Li Luan's jaw drop. He had been in the army since he was a teenager. He had seen many armies, including some elite ones, but this was the first time he had seen one as outstanding as the one before him. Were these people the celestial soldiers and celestial generals that were mentioned in the books? Why were their actions so uniform? Why didn't the 200 people make any extra noise? At this moment, Li Luan had a feeling that Qishan would definitely be taken down if they were to fight head-on. At the same time, he did not know why he felt his blood boiling. At this moment, he suddenly had the urge to join this army. Ready. The squad leaders reported softly. As the commander of this battle, Xiao Feng said to Li Luan beside him after seeing that the Lang Feng were ready, "It's up to you now. I can guarantee you that as long as you lay down your weapons and surrender, you can live. On the other hand, no matter what the reason is, if you dare to pick up your weapons and resist, you must die." Understood. Li Luan could tell that this army's combat power was extraordinary. He did not dare to bargain and immediately agreed. Then, an iron loudspeaker appeared in front of him. It was a round loudspeaker. Even without electricity, the loudspeaker could spread the sound better. Holding the loudspeaker, Li Luan's loud voice suddenly rang in the night. "Brothers in the camp, I'm Li Luan, the squad leader of the guards on the wall. You've been surrounded. Lay down your weapons and surrender, and you can live. We're all Hans. 500 years ago, we were one family. Don't be a futile resistance." His shout was like a clap of thunder in the silent night. It exploded in the entire camp and caused an uproar. For a moment, there were all kinds of curses in the camp. Most of them were cursing to find their uniforms and weapons. The cursing continued for about half a quarter of an hour before it slowly subsided. Then, in the dark, a 100-man squad crept toward the wooden fence. It seemed like they wanted to use their advantage of being more familiar with the terrain to launch a counterattack. Ready the rocket launcher. Target the wooden fence. Fire. Xiao Feng had already seen the enemy's every move with his night vision goggles. Night battles were a part of Lang Feng's training. Because of proper nutrition, the ordinary soldiers did not suffer from night blindness. At this moment, they could clearly see the enemy's actions in the opposite camp. The commander gave the order, and immediately, 2 rocket launchers with powerful flames shot forward. After 1.5 seconds, they slammed into the wooden fence that could block the impact of manpower and horsepower. Immediately, flames soared into the sky, and the sound was like thunder. The rocket launcher was a type of infantry anti-tank and siege weapon. It was light and had a short range. At the same time, it could be fired in a straight line, upward, or downward direction. It had a variety of attack methods that were perfect for close-range sieges. The 2 rocket launchers were fired and instantly destroyed the main gate of the camp. The powerful flames and explosive force scared the 100-man vanguard soldiers who wanted to sneak out of the camp. What is this? Is this the wrath of the heavens? This must be the punishment of the heavens. After seeing such powerful firepower, the 100-man vanguard's morale immediately collapsed. In the face of the unknown, humans naturally had a kind of fear, not to mention that it had such great power. Li Luan looked at everything in front of him in a daze. When he saw such powerful firearms, he knew that the soldiers of Qishan's camp had been defeated. He only hesitated for a few seconds before he shouted again, "Brothers, I'm Li Luan. You should have seen the power of these firearms. If you don't want to die, throw down your weapons and surrender. Your families are still waiting for us to return safely in the city." Chapter 79. Under Li Luan's persuasion and the powerful impact of the rocket launcher, some of the smarter soldiers finally realized that they weren't strong enough. The first person threw his weapon to the ground. Then, like a contagious disease, there was a second person, a third person. The frightened soldiers of Qishan threw down the weapons in their hands one by one and then walked out of the military camp in groups. They covered their heads and walked out of the military camp. The entire battle had ended so simply without firing a single shot or firing a single cannon. Of course, this was because of the deterrence of the powerful weapons. However, more importantly, it was because the soldiers of Qishan already had a grudge against the Shang dynasty. They didn't have enough to eat and couldn't wear clothes. Such an army had long lost their morale. How could they be counted on to win the battle? From Li Luan's words, the Qishan military camp had more than 2,000 soldiers. Xiao Feng ordered the auxiliary soldiers who had already entered the city to maintain law and order to take in the captives. At the same time, Qishan city was sealed. Only people were allowed to enter and not leave. The entire city was checked overnight. If there were any dangerous people, they would be killed. However, at the same time, the soldiers were not allowed to harass the commoners. If they were caught, they would be dealt with according to military law. After occupying the city, there had been countless military exercises to maintain peace. Putting them in Qishan city was just turning the exercises into actual battles. However, the soldiers of Langfeng who had made all kinds of preparations were still very familiar with it. In just a few hours, Qishan city's law and order were restored. There were even some courageous commoners who dared to appear in the morning market to continue trading. When the sun rose, a new 5-starred red flag was placed on the city walls of Qishan city. This meant that from this moment onwards, this place was under Yang Qindong's control. Get someone to inform Captain Gao Xiong of this news. Then pass it on to the 6th young master. At the same time, all platoon leaders and squad leaders will have a meeting to review the battle and point out their own shortcomings. Xiao Feng followed Yang Qindong's training and carried out his work with the mindset that there must be a conclusion after the battle. In conclusion, it was a method that could allow people to grow and become stronger quickly. Reality also proved that a big summary after a big battle and a small summary after a small battle could expose more potential problems and point out the correct direction to fight the next battle. In the palace hall, the officials had already arrived at the morning court. Because the emperor had not arrived yet, the officials gathered in 2s and 3s to chat. Lord Li, did you receive Yang Shima's gift yesterday? A voice that was not too abrupt came from the crowd. In fact, he was already used to such conversations before every morning court session. Lord Zhang, what kind of gift is that? Isn't it just toilet paper? Lord Li shook his head lightly, as if Lord Zhang was making a fuss over nothing. Hey, there are many ways to use that. If I'm not wrong, you definitely haven't used that thing. Lord Zhang said with a mysterious expression. Am I useless? Did you use it? Lord Li's curiosity was piqued by Lord Zhang's words. Of course, it's all thanks to my wife. When it was delivered, her stomach was not feeling well, so she took it and used it. When she came back, she told you about the wonderful effects of this thing. It was really comfortable and very soft. I didn't believe it, so I used it once. I decided that after that, I'll always use this toilet paper. Not only that, when I'm done with court, I'll send someone to the Yang clan manor to find a Yang Xian horse and get some more, Lord Zhang said as if he had benefited from this experience. It wasn't just Lord Zhang in court. Lord Wang, Lord Sun, Lord Zhou, Lord Wu, and the other officials had all used this benefit and knew of its benefits. The officials who didn't think much of it before were all intrigued by the words of these people. They all decided to go back to their mansions to see what the toilet paper was. They wanted to see if it was better than the wood and bamboo pieces that they usually used. Because of Yang Qindong, the toilet bowl had been introduced first, and the majority of officials in the capital had already started using it. Now, toilet paper had become a complementary product. Although it seemed unremarkable, it was truly the beginning of a new civilization. Not to mention what was said in the morning court, after the court was dismissed, most of the important officials hurried back to their residences. Not long after, the stewards of the various residences boarded their carriages and left the city, heading straight for the Yang clan manor 15 li south of the city. This was because the Yang clan manor had a large number of potatoes, and it was the only one in the Great Ming Dynasty. For its safety, the Eastern faction guards and embroidered uniform guards took turns to guard the manor to prevent anyone from causing trouble. When the stewards of the various residences arrived, they were all blocked outside. Left with no choice, they could only pass the visiting cards from their family to Steward Yang Neng and explain their intentions. Regarding this, the new steward Yang Neng had already received instructions from the sixth young master. He cupped his fists and said to the stewards who came forward to ask for toilet paper, "I'm sorry, everyone. My sixth young master said that the toilet paper was shipped from the sea, and the production is limited. Previously, I took out the toilet paper because I thought that it would be better to share it with everyone, but now, I really don't have much left. If everyone really wants it, then wait until the Heavens Beyond trading firm opens for business and buy it there." Yang Neng had a smile on his face. As the saying goes, a slap doesn't hit a smiling face. Since he had already said so, what else could the stewards do? They could only hurriedly return to their residences. Since they didn't have any new goods for a while, they would have to use the toilet paper that was delivered yesterday sparingly. Other than the first young master and first madam, everyone else could forget about using it. Of course, there were also some officials who thought that Yang Chendong was too stingy. It was just some unremarkable toilet paper, and he wanted to set up a trading firm that they had never heard of to sell it. How much money could that thing be worth? Could he earn back the capital by opening a shop for it? These people's thoughts weren't wrong. After all, toilet paper wasn't something that could be put on the table. Moreover, it wasn't like they couldn't do without it. In the past, when there was no such thing, shouldn't everyone still do what they should do? For something like this, if it was sold at a high price, there probably wouldn't be many people who would buy it. However, if it was sold at a low price, they probably wouldn't even be able to earn back the rent for the shop. That was the normal way of thinking, but how could the people of this era guess what was going on in Yang Chendong's mind? If you said that toilet paper wasn't worth much, there was nothing wrong with that. However, Yang Chendong firmly believed that once people were used to it, they wouldn't be able to adapt to it if you asked them to use wood or bamboo. More importantly, he intended to use hunger marketing to sell it, which meant that he would sell it at a fixed amount a day. Based on the idea that the rarer something was, the more valuable it would be. Once the supply exceeded the demand, the price would naturally rise. When that time came, if other adults used toilet paper, would you still have the nerve to use bamboo? Even if the price was slightly higher, there would still be many people who would rush to buy it. The capital was not like any other place. There were many rich people here, and even more people with authority. Even if the price of toilet paper was a little more expensive, it was still completely acceptable. This would become one of Yang Chendong's tools for making money. Although he couldn't make a huge profit, he would win in the long run. Who residence? Little Qing was lying on a wooden bed with a painful expression. The 2 hits on her buttocks made her feel as if she was about to die. Little Qing, how do you feel? Does it hurt? With a face full of tears, Hu Yan at this moment made people truly understand what it meant to say that women were made of water. Ever since they returned to the courtyard last night and little Qing was beaten twice, she had been crying non-stop. Even after a night had passed, her tears still flowed out uncontrollably. She really didn't know where her tears came from. "Miss, don't cry. Your eyes are swollen. It's so ugly." Resisting the pain on her butt, little Qing, who felt sorry for Hu Yan, squeezed out a smile and said. The miss was the master, and the maid was the servant. In this hierarchical feudal society, little Qing still dared to make fun of her miss like this. It could be seen that the relationship between the two was really good to a certain extent. "I don't care. I don't care if it's ugly. I just want to cry. I want to cry for my father to see how hard he hit me." Hu Yan shook her head vigorously, looking very wronged. But miss, the Lord has already hit me. It's useless even if you cry. It's better to find some medicine for little Qing to apply to the wound. Little Qing shook her head helplessly. Her miss was really cute at this time, but her butt was really painful. Ah. Do I need to apply medicine? Little Qing, is it very painful? Don't worry, I'll go out and find medicine. Hu Yan also got up at this moment, then wiped the tears on the corner of her eyes with her sleeve, and then strode out of the room. Outside the Mrs. courtyard, Hu Zhangning gave Hu Yan a confinement order, and Lieutenant Gao Sheng was guarding here. When she came out, she just saw Gao Sheng dressed in a brocade guard uniform, and Hu Yan was angry. She thought that it was this person who complained and caused her, Little Qing, and Lieutenant Sun Chuang to suffer. Mississippi, as soon as he saw Hu Yan come out, Gao Sheng straightened his chest and greeted her. Although he knew that what he did was arranged by the Lord, it was a fact that he had offended the miss. As soon as Hu Yan walked to the front of the courtyard, she deliberately pretended to be very angry and looked at Gao Sheng. But perhaps this gaze was too weak. Gao Sheng's expression did not change, and he still looked neither servile nor overbearing. Do you have injury medicine? Hu Yan, who wanted to be angry and ignore Gao Sheng, soon couldn't bear it. Thinking of little Qing who was in pain in the room, she had to lower her head. Yes. Hearing that she was not going to question him, but wanted injury medicine, Gao Sheng immediately took out a porcelain bottle from his arms and handed it over. Use the amount of medicine to cover the wound 3 times a day. Chapter 80. Reaching out to take the porcelain bottle, Hu Yan angrily turned around and left without even saying a word of thanks. Gao Sheng seemed to be used to being treated like this. He just smiled and stood there again. At this time, a cough suddenly sounded behind him. He turned around vigilantly. After seeing the person, he hurriedly bowed respectfully and said, "Sir." Why did Miss look for you just now? The person who came was Hu Zhangning. At this time, he had a constipated expression. After the morning court, he was called by his mother, Hu Yushi, to find a way to get some toilet paper. At this moment, Hu Zhangning was stumped. It turned out that after the Yang family sent the toilet paper yesterday, Hu Wangshi, who was in charge of the backyard, was going to put it in the family's warehouse. However, Hu Yan, who was rushing over, took it away. Then she used it and the effect was really good. She gave the rest of the things to her mother and grandmother, Hu Yushi. With the recommendation of her granddaughter, Hu Yushi had people verify the magical effect of this thing. Then, she sent the rest of the toilet paper to her relatives in the city. This was also the old lady's style of doing things. Perhaps because of her humble background, Hu Yushi had always valued her relatives very much. Once there was something good, she would immediately send it over. The toilet paper was the same. Except for a small packet, the rest were sent away. Hu Yan came back from the morning court and asked the old lady about the toilet paper. The old lady, who had no stock, had to give the task to her son. She also said that she wanted to get some more. There were still some relatives who had not shared it. In Hu Yushi's eyes, her son was the guardian of the genie guards. There was nothing that could be difficult for him. After Hu Zhangning received the task, he was not in a hurry. He sent the housekeeper of the house to the Yang family village 15 miles south of the city to ask for it. Unexpectedly, he returned empty-handed. According to the housekeeper, not only the Hu family, but many ministers in the court also sent their housekeepers, but they did not bring back a packet of toilet paper. Hu Zhangning, who had already promised his mother, was a little anxious. Thinking that the toilet paper was given to the old lady by his daughter, she should have some stock in her hands. He had to bite the bullet and come to the door. If it was in the past, Hu Zhangning guaranteed that his daughter would agree to such a thing. The relationship between father and daughter had always been very good. But this time, he had no confidence in his heart. He had just punished the other party yesterday, so he wasn't very confident in speaking up now. Even though he wasn't sure, Hu Zhangning, who had always been extremely filial, still decided to give it a try. He couldn't let his mother down. While Hu Zhangning was still thinking about what to say, Gao Sheng, who was standing in front of him, had already answered, "Sir, Miss asked me for injury medicine." Injury medicine? Was little Qing seriously injured? It's just 2 military rods. Hu Zhangning said nonchalantly. When Gao Sheng heard this, he couldn't help but think in his heart. 2 strikes from the military rod might not be much to a soldier, but for Xiao Qing, who had tender skin and was greatly cared for by the young miss, that was already a very heavy punishment. He thought this in his heart, but he could not say it out loud. He could only say with a serious expression, "This is the first time that Maid Xiao Qing has been beaten by the military." In addition, these 2 beatings were not exaggerated at all. It is inevitable that she will be injured. What? Was there no water at all? I say, you are also right. She is a maid, not a thick-skinned soldier like you. How can she be treated equally? Hu Zhangning pretended to be very angry and reprimanded Gao Sheng. Then he said casually, "Okay, I will go in and take a look." He strode into the young miss courtyard. Looking at Hu Zhangning's departing figure, Gao Sheng was stunned in place. How could he not be treated equally? If these 2 beatings were exaggerated and didn't hurt or itch, he was afraid that when he returned, he would be accused of favoritism. This job was really not easy to do. Hu Zhangning strode into Hu Yan's courtyard. Before he even entered, he called out loudly, "Is Yan here? Father is coming in." As soon as he shouted, Hu Yan, whose face was still filled with anger, had already walked out of the main door. "Of course your daughter is here. Where can a grounded person go?" Haha. Hu Zhangning smiled awkwardly when he heard the obvious hidden meaning in her words. Then he stretched his neck and glanced into the room. "Is your maid Xiao Qing all right?" "All right? She won't die for the time being." Hu Yan's answer was still cold. This time, she was really disappointed in her father. It was true that she had done something wrong, and she deserved to be grounded. However, he shouldn't have hit little Qing so hard. There was a lot of blood on her butt. She cried for the whole night and was still in a trance at this time. As soon as he heard the words, "won't die," Hu Zhangning knew that his daughter was still angry with him. But as a father, how could he simply apologize? Thinking that if he continued, there might be more sarcastic remarks waiting for him, he simply did not ask any more. Instead, he asked straightforwardly, "Yan, father wants to ask you, do you still have the toilet paper that the Yang family sent yesterday?" If it were any other time, Hu Yan would definitely ask why, but now she was angry and turned around to leave without thinking. After a while, when she came back, she put a small packet of untouched toilet paper into Hu Zhangning's hand. "Don't tell me there's only this much." Looking at the packet in his hand, Hu Zhangning felt that things were going to be bad. Daughter kept a total of 2 small packets and gave the rest to mother and grandmother. What? Father, are you going to take that half packet too? Hu Yan was really angry at this time. She thought that this was simply her father taking revenge on her. Because she made him angry, now he didn't even let her use the toilet paper and wanted to give it all away. Hu Zhangning heard the resentment in his daughter's voice and knew that if he didn't explain, it was likely to become a knot between the father and daughter. So he explained the matter again. "It's not that father wants it, but Yan knows your grandmother. Whenever she has something good, she must give it to her relatives. See, when the toilet paper came, she gave it all away, but it was still not enough, so she called father and asked me to think of a way. But the housekeeper of the house went to Yangjia village. The housekeeper of the 6th young master said that the things were shipped from the sea and were not products of our great Ming dynasty. Now he doesn't have any stock in his hands. If he wants it, he can wait until the Heavens Beyond Trading Company opens and buy it there. But your grandmother is an impatient person, how can she wait for so long?" After saying this, Hu Zhangning spread his hands, indicating that he was helpless. Originally, Hu Yan was prepared to ignore her father, but when the matter involved Yang Chendong, she forgot the decision in her heart. The 6th young master doesn't have it? If not, why did he give it to every family yesterday? This doesn't make sense. Yes, if you say that the sixth young master doesn't have it at all, no one will believe it. But thinking about it, there shouldn't be much left, so it should be true. Otherwise, he wouldn't have embarrassed so many officials. But since he did this, the idea of getting the toilet paper from there is very small. Hu Zhangning said as he shook his head. After hearing her father's analysis, Hu Yan didn't have the same opinion. Instead, she said seriously, since the sixth young master has it, as long as the people sent out are suitable, they can definitely get some. Why don't I go? She had always wanted to see what Yang Qindong looked like, but she didn't have the chance. Wasn't now the right time? She was going to get toilet paper for her grandmother, which was a show of filial piety. Even if others knew, they couldn't blame her. Originally, Hu Zhangning was still worried about this matter. His identity as a butler was not easy to use. Did he have to go personally? If he wanted to come, it would be fine, but if he didn't, wouldn't he lose face? Hu Zhangning really didn't have a better way to deal with Yang Qindong. He had just made a great contribution, and the potatoes hadn't ripened yet. Who could force him to do things? Using martial arts to subdue people, how powerful was that young heir beside him? He was definitely not a match for him. If he couldn't do it, Hu Zhangning had no other way. But now that he heard that his daughter was going personally, his eyes lit up. Yes, his daughter was a child. It would be best if she came, but even if she didn't, it wouldn't be a big deal. But the only thing was that his daughter wasn't married yet. If word got out that she was so ostentatious, it would be bad for her reputation. Hu Zhangning didn't reject her immediately. Instead, he looked like he was deep in thought, which made Hu Yan see hope. Father, just let me go. I promise that after I go, as long as there is a little bit of toilet paper left in Yangjia village, I will get it for you. Oh, right, I won't go alone. I'll ask Sister Yang Qi to go with me as a companion. I think outsiders won't be able to say anything. Sister Yang Qi, are you talking about Yang Duo heir who married Wang Go? Hu Zhangning immediately mentioned the situation of the Yang family's seventh sister. In the past, Hu Zhangning wouldn't have known about a daughter of the Yang family. But ever since Yang Qindong appeared, Yang Duo heir had become a celebrity and a woman that everyone knew. Yes, it's her, Hu Yan said proudly. Yang Duo heir hasn't been to the Yang village yet? This time, it's only right for me to accompany her back. When the sixth young master sees his seventh sister and is happy, won't he give me whatever I want? Hu Yan said proudly, but in her heart, she was thinking that since it was her first time meeting Yang Qindong, she should at least bring some greeting gifts. So, she set her sights on Yang Duo heir. Hu Zhangning thought about the feasibility of this matter. Indeed, with such a reason, Yang Qindong would have a good impression of her and the chances of her getting toilet paper would increase a lot. But then his gaze fell on his daughter again, looking at her with a faint smile. You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.